We'll call this evening's hearing to order. I think my mic is on, yes? Yeah, okay, good. And I love seeing the public process at work. Good for you guys. All right. Who am I? Why am I on reverb? Okay, my name is Joan Woodard, and I'm your hearing examiner for this evening. The purpose of this hearing is to allow me to receive evidence and testimony on the matters that are pending. I make a recommendation only to the county commissioners. I do not make the final decision. I will be submitting my recommendation to staff within 2 weeks of this evening's hearing. The application will then be scheduled for deliberations before the county commissioners. If you wish to give testimony, I need you to fill out one of the sheets in the back, which it looks like a lot of you have done. And when you come to the podium, please remember to give your name and your address for the record before you begin your testimony. First, staff will introduce the application, then we will hear from the applicant. After the applicant's testimony, we will then get into the public comment sheets. We will hear from those who are in favor, those who are neutral, and then those who are opposed. The public not speaking will be read into the record. We will then give the applicant and/or their representative an opportunity for rebuttal of any of the testimony stated into the record from the public before we close the public hearing. After that point, we will receive no more testimony. The time limits are 30 minutes for the applicant's presentation, 3 minutes for public testimony, and 15 minutes for applicant rebuttal. I would ask that you direct all of your testimony to me and not to the audience. Are there any questions? Okay, Director Callahan?
Thank you, Madam Hearing Examiner, and good evening, everyone. I'm David Callahan, Kootenai County Community Development Director. I just want to open up with a few brief remarks because tonight's public hearing is quasi-judicial in nature. That sets the tone for things that we must abide by. Quasi-judicial, for those of you that don't know, means that this hearing tonight is conducted like a court procedure, although it is not a court of law. Because it is conducted like a court procedure, we have to do things in a certain orderly fashion, if you will, and I'll touch on that in just a moment. But I wanted to explain procedural due process so that this will all come together for you. Procedural due process has come about over time, and it's a term that attorneys use going back to the U.S. Constitution 5th and 14th Amendments, where we must guarantee that whenever someone's life, liberty, or property interests are affected, that they have the opportunity to be adequately notified, to be heard. There's clear regulatory standards by which they are judged, and there's an unbiased and objective decision maker. In order for all those things to come about, the staff, have noticed in the newspaper and sent out adjoining property owner notices, and that's presumably how all of you found out about this. So that's been met. The opportunity to be heard will be met tonight through the public hearing. The clear regulatory standards are set forth in the Land Use and Development Code. That's how the staff makes a determination of whether we recommend in favor or in opposition of a proposal. And then the unbiased decision maker tonight is our hearing examiner. But that's why I wanted to open up tonight, is to make sure that you all as an audience understand that while we appreciate you being here, we want to hear from you, I have been in enough hearings to know that sometimes things get out of hand, and it's not even intentional. So I want to encourage you to stay mindful that it's inappropriate to applaud after a speaker. Just wait until everything's done, say your piece. You can celebrate after the hearing, but let's keep tonight's hearing on an even keel and going forward as efficiently as possible. It's also inappropriate to make remarks from the audience while someone's at the lectern speaking. I've been in hearings where someone blurted out, "He's a liar!" And that is so inappropriate. That's the sort of thing I will ask the hearing examiner if I may escort that person out the room the next time it happens. And again, because it taints the public hearing process. And again, if this ends up in a court of law, we want to be able to ensure that we've done our part in accordance with due process of law. So with that, that's all I have at this point. Unless you have anything else you want to add, I'll turn things over to Vlad Finkel, who will give tonight's presentation.
I just might remind everybody that we do have a timer, and it will be set for the appropriate amount of time that each person in their type has to speak. And does it beep with a warning and then a final beep? No, beeps with a warning. Nope, final beep. So watch that, unless you want me to gavel you off, which I don't like to do, okay? Okay, so our first case this evening is CUP 22-0009. And I understand that it has been pulled
Yes, ma'am.
for this evening because, so they've,
They basically decided not to go forward.
right, so like canceled the application. So this closes the hearing for CUP 22-0009. Now, we will go to CUP 22-0008.
Examiner, I forgot to mention one thing, pardon me, but we are at capacity under the fire code, and we're actually a little over capacity. So I would ask that for anyone else that walks into or wants to come in, you wait until one of these seats are vacated. You can stay out in the hallway where you can see everything live streamed on the monitor out in the hallway. But
Yes, they're doing this one first
Let me-
on the agenda.
Just asking them.
What, something else?
let me mute this one.
No, this one.
Yes.
Well, I don't see who's not muted.
You should, I think that
Mute all.
Michelle Fitch.
Oh,
You don't want to mute all.
Oh,
Jonathan's needs to.
it's not that one. It's not
I think
Michelle.
they're good now.
Okay. I'm sorry for the interruption. That was Zoom. So I believe at this point we're ready to go forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Vlad.
Good evening. For the record, Vlad Finkel with Kootenai County Community Development. Before I get into the specifics of this request, I'd like to state on record what staff's obligation is with every application that we receive, whether it's for a conditional use permit or any other land use permit in Kootenai County. There are two main objectives that we as staff have to address and analyze in order to make a recommendation to you as well as the Board of County Commissioners. The first one is impacts associated with the request and appropriate mitigation. Those two items have to work hand in hand. What that means is that the impacts associated with the request need to be feasibly and adequately mitigated with conditions of approval placed by either staff or jurisdictional agencies or combination of both. If in case conditions of approval that are brought forth by staff or agencies with jurisdictions do not adequately address impacts associated with the request, it's likely the case that staff will have to recommend denial. So I want to make that very clear. For those folks that are not familiar with the terminology of mitigation, it's simply put, it's a way to address impacts that are associated with any given request. With that, I'll start with this presentation. As you stated, this is case number CUP 2208, a residential care facility requested by Mr. Zaring, the owner of the property, and the applicant Jennifer Scott, who would like to establish this facility and operate it. There was a question raised through the review process why staff had assigned a residential care facility designation and whether or not it met the proposed use accurately, or it accurately described it as proposed and as portrayed by the applicant. I'll read out of the Land Use and Development Code definition for residential care facility. A facility in which 9 or more unrelated elderly persons or persons with disabilities reside, generally on a long-term basis, and receive on-site supervision in connection with their disability or age-related infirmity. The facility may also provide short-term rehabilitation services for such persons. Resident staff, if employed, need not to be related to each other or any of the other persons residing in the facilities. So the caveat of having folks reside with disabilities was brought to our legal counsel for determination whether the proposed facility by Ms. Scott would in fact meet that definition. We concluded in conjunction with our legal counsel and staff that under the federal ADA law, we cannot determine or question whether or not the folks that this facility will be catered to are disabled or not. We have to give them the benefit of doubt and consider the folks that will, the kids that will be treated at this facility having disabilities, whether they're mental or other disabilities that Ms. Scott is proposing to provide therapy and treatment for. This is how staff arrived at that classification of use. Just a second. The proposed facility is located on the east side of Kootenai County. It's located west of Wolf Lodge and it's located east of Wolf Lodge and west of 4th of July Pass. The subject property is bordered by I-90 on the south end and Alder Creek Road, the primary access road to the subject property, to the north. The property consists of 73 acres, and the applicant wants to utilize the 52 northern acres of the subject property for their facility. The southern 20 acres, plus or minus, will be at some point utilized for residential structure that may either stay on this property or be split out through the exemption process that the code allows to create a 20-acre exempt parcel of land without going through a formal subdivision process. So I want to be very clear on that the proposal is to encumber only 52 acres of the subject property. As you can see, the site has some steep slopes along I-90 where it generally slopes down towards I-90, and then the upper portion has some slopes, but primarily the area that will be utilized or that the applicant wants to utilize as part of this application will be on the plateau on the northern piece of this property. And I forgot to mention that this is the view from Google Earth facing north. This is a view of the property facing east towards Kellogg. As you can see, there's significant slopes to I-90, so the site is very well, or the area of where the applicant is proposing, it's somewhat insulated from any access either north or south. It will be located right in the center of this 72-acre piece, with the primary access coming off of the off of Alder Creek Road on the east side of the property, and it will then enter into the property heading west. The applicant, if this application is approved, the applicant has agreed with the adjoining property owner to grant them an access easement for the benefit of this parcel. The subject property is zoned rural, and the comp plan designation is resource recreation. I'd like to read into the record the applicant's mission statement for this facility. The applicant's narrative states that the Living Water Youth Ranch is dedicated to making a difference in the lives of at-risk youth by providing a safe, Christ-centered residential environment where licensed professionals and qualified staff utilize a comprehensive treatment approach to set at youth at-risk youth on the path in healing, growth, and lifelong transformational change. I'll let Ms. Scott further elaborate on the type of services that provide and the treatment that they provide once it's her opportunity to speak. As you can see, this is the proposed layout of the facility. There will be a main building, 2 guest cabins, maintenance garage, hay storage facility, well house, horse barn, corral, outdoor recreation area for ropes, course, archery, volleyball, snowshoeing, camping, and trails for hiking. These are some of the photos of the property in question. I'm sorry, it's hard to see, but the photo key shows the top 2 photos facing north and the lower 2 photos facing south. As I previously stated, the area of proposed development is relatively flat, although it is located to what is classified a Class 2 stream. So if the applicant if the application is approved, we do have a condition of approval that they have to maintain an appropriate buffer of 30 feet from the ordinary high water mark of a Class 2 stream. During the agency comment period, we solicited comments from the agencies that are before you on the slide. We received standard requirements such as from DEQ, if the facility is going to provide water to 25 or more individuals, it's considered to be a public water system. It would have to be designed to meet state requirements as well as receive a water right from Idaho Department of Water Resources. Panhandle Health District has the same requirements in terms of wastewater facility. Kootenai Fire and Rescue has significant fire flow requirements to serve this project. When it comes to community development building division, there were a number of comments in the record that are referenced in the application as well as seen by the public that I'd like to provide further clarification on. When this application was first submitted and the way it was portrayed in the narrative, staff did not realize the potential implications of such a facility from a building design aspect. When our building official looked at it at first, they concluded, based on the information provided by Ms. Scott, that the facility would be an institution. It would be on lockdown where the self-preservation aspect of this facility would be left at employees' will versus the kids themselves, meaning that they would be on lockdown and that their ability to freely move within the building or outside would depend fully on the employee's decision. Ms. Scott was advised of that, and she immediately contacted myself as well as the building official, and through the course of several meetings, the application was revised where Ms. Scott determined that she would like to pursue a facility that would not be considered a lockdown, where self-preservation was at the hands of kids themselves, where the rooms would not be locked down, where kids could freely move around. However, for security purposes, they would have an alarm system as well as security cameras, as well as drones and staff to make sure that the kids remained within the building, or if they were to go outside, that it was with the permission of staff. So they were taking appropriate measures to keep the kids inside the building, but it would not be considered from a building standpoint a lockdown facility where self-preservation was not at the hands of children, and therefore it would not be considered an institution classification under the building code. Now, the full design or the full architectural drawings have not been prepared because this is merely going through a land use process. Therefore, I want to be very careful that if, in fact, the hearing body decides to approve this case, that further review of the design standards or the building code requirements would be further evaluated to determine the type of use or the type of classification it may be. In speaking with the building official, they advised me that it could perhaps be considered partially, it'll be a multi-use facility, partially an assembly or R-type residential use, but that has not been determined at this time. The remaining agencies had recommendations and requirements that if the hearing body decides to approve this application, they are implemented as conditions of approval. During the public comment period, we received an overwhelming amount of opposition with regard to this request. We did not receive through a formal review process any comments in support, but 97 comments in opposition of this application. And then I believe there were at least a handful of comments that were submitted after the deadline period, which we cannot introduce because they were submitted after the deadline. But some of the concerns that were pointed out to staff were increase in vehicular traffic, inadequate security, potential runaways, trespass, vandalism, property crime, impassable road conditions in the winter months, impact to groundwater supply, limited cellular coverage in case of an emergency, remote location, and delayed emergency response time. Now, I'd like to state that those were the comments of the public. I have visited the site myself 3 different times. 2 times to do a site visit because we had some concerns over the stream on site, and then I also posted the property. My observations were that it is a remote location, and I'd like to disclose I have a T-Mobile coverage on my cell phone, and unfortunately I had absolutely no coverage. In fact, I was lost because the property doesn't have an address, and I had to use an adjoining property to find this site. I had to call my supervisor to help guide me in the right direction because I was not getting. I had to go back to 4th of July Pass, contact my supervisor, and get assistance in finding the property because I was not getting any coverage, and my Google map was not working on my cell phone. So it was very challenging to find the property. I have been advised by the applicant that there is coverage from Verizon Wireless. So I don't know that to be true. I'm just stating what has been, what I've been advised of by the applicant. So that's our main concern, is lack of coverage, remote location of the site, and delayed emergency response. Now, I'd like to enter into the record. We received a comment late last week. I'd like to state that in the past, we have not solicited comments from the Sheriff's Department because we have not been receiving comments on historical projects. However, the Sheriff's Department had contacted me, and they advised that they were contacted by the neighbors with concerns over the facility, and they would like to provide a comment. Because this letter was submitted after the deadline, I'd like to enter it into the record and have Mr. Deep, or Captain Deep, who submitted the letter, testify on record. I don't know if you want him to testify after my presentation or if you want him to testify when you get to him. He filled out a form as well. It's totally your choice.
Entered Exhibit 1002.
So, staff analysis and concerns were raised with regard to compatibility of the request, being that it is considered to be a facility that's commercial in nature. Commercial in nature merely means that it's more intense than a residential use. So that's the concern that we have, whether or not this facility could fit within the existing residential development. While there is sparse residential development, it is predominantly residential or open space or state land adjoining this property. The other concerns that we had is we were not sure whether the proposal could adequately mitigate negative environmental or social impacts associated with the request. Specifically, concerns with regard to security and kids perhaps roaming off and causing some mischief on adjoining parcels of land. We'd like to have the applicant further clarify that that concern when it's their chance to speak with regard to security. The other issue we had was with services and facilities available and being adequate. Our concern is that this facility is roughly 30 to 35 minutes away from urban core, where medical services as well as sheriff's office, fire department are located. So in the winter months, are concerned that it could be delayed even further, and accessibility can be very challenging in inclement weather, especially snow and sleet and ice. And last but not least, we had concerns with the comprehensive plan, because the comprehensive plan does not the resource recreation designation does not contemplate such a use. So our understanding is that it's difficult at best to make an argument that this type of facility would fit under the comp plan designation. Although we got to keep in mind that it's not regulatory, it's merely a document that sets goals and policies for staff to utilize when we review an application. But nonetheless, we do have concerns with the comp plan designation. And one last document that I'd like to enter into the record is staff had conducted a pre-application on this request on March 22nd of this year. In the notes that were provided to Ms. Scott and her crew, it states that while you may submit all the required documents into the record and go through the review process and have agencies provide the necessary comments, there's not a guarantee that the project will be approved, and that it has to go through its course of a public hearing and be determined by elected officials whether it's suitable for this area. So I want to make sure that this is in the record as well.
Entered in as Exhibit HE 1003.
With that, I conclude with my presentation unless you have any further comments or questions for me.
Not right now. Thank you, Vlad. Okay, we'll hear from the applicant.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Scott, and I'm the founder of Living Water Youth Ranch. I wanted to just kind of introduce who we are. I've been a 30-year resident of Idaho. I'm currently a licensed clinical professional counselor and have been for the past 11 years. I own a behavioral health agency in Hayden. We employ multiple therapists who also have a desire to see lives of the youth changed. Collectively, as a group of natives, long-term North Idaho residents and landowners ourselves, Living Water Youth Ranch understands the importance of protecting the way of life for the people in the Wolf Lodge community. All of our board members, currently 4, hold strong Idaho values. I'd like to introduce Marcus Anderson, just wave, Jeff Doty, Chris McCreary, and then myself, Jennifer Scott. And collectively, we share a lot of the values that North Idaho holds, which is hunting, fishing, hiking, camping, just living on acreage and homesteading ourselves. A lot of us live on property, most of us live on property and enjoy recreating outdoors. We have strong Christian morals and values, and we love families and people and neighbors, and we work hard to protect Idaho values. Sorry, I didn't have that on the proper slide. All right. So I'd like to point out what is at-risk youth by definition. An at-risk youth is a young person who is facing circumstances or conditions which may negatively impact their academic or social progress, making them less likely to transition successfully into adulthood, essentially just not well functioning in the community, needing some help. At-risk youth does not mean high-risk youth. This is a challenge that we wanted to work really hard to overcome because of the public perception. It was our understanding, talking with a handful of people, that they really thought that these were going to be hardened criminals. We are not going to be accepting clinically complex mental health disorders, no violent crimes, so no assault, no battery, no sex offenders, no rape, no molestation. basically no high-risk mental health disorders, and you see a few there. The population that we will serve are low to moderate risk youth, ages 13 to 17, and our goal is to intervene and provide quality residential treatment prior to these youth making permanent life-altering decisions. Most of these kids come from excellent families who need help, and we do have a few people here tonight who will speak on that behalf. Typical struggles for low to moderate youth include depression, low anxiety, low self-worth, just a consistent pattern of defiance, disrespect, negative attitude, impaired decision-making, immature behavior. Addictions are a big problem today. Video game addictions, technology, mild substance use, unhealthy relationships, emotional dysregulation. You can see the list there. That's low to moderate. We will have a very thorough screening and assessment process in order to ensure that we accept the most appropriate youth for our program. Rigorous screening, intake interviews, and assessments will take place. And this is prior to acceptance into the program. There will be screening by a professional intake counselor, a comprehensive history and application process, a release for permission to do a background check on adolescents because their records are sealed, being minors, so that'll be what the parents have to sign as a release so we can look into their histories. Medical clearance from a physician, mental health clearance from whomever they might be seeing in the community at that time, which would entail a comprehensive evaluation by a licensed professional. High-risk, severe, and complex mental health profiles will not be accepted. Our goal, again, is to help them before they're in significant trouble. 2 professional referrals will be necessary from school principals, mental health professionals, and then there's going to be a comprehensive referral format that's going to go out in the form of specific pointed questions that they have to answer. It's not just going to be them telling us what they think we need to know. It's going to be the things that we need to know as far as adverse history and behavior and things of that nature. Primary concerns expressed by the community, these were those 97 reports that Vlad had referenced, and we did some breakdown. Over half, so 50.6% of the oppositions expressed were from outside the Wolf Lodge area, such as Post Falls, Hayden, Dalton Gardens, St. Mary's, Metamont, Cataldo, and Harrison. So quite a ways away from Wolf Lodge. 53% of those oppositions submitted were from the same household. Some households submitted up to 5 individual oppositions, including oppositions from their children from the same address. Some didn't provide addresses as required. Statements were made regarding overwhelming public opposition. However, after compiling the data, most of the opposition was from outside the Wolf Lodge area. In the next few slides, we do want to address their concerns, and those will be the safety and security, emergency services, staffing, runaways, and road access and traffic. So safety and security. We are going to work with a professional security firm. They will consult, equip, and train our staff to ensure that we have the best security as well as ongoing training for our staff, including comprehensive training prior to hiring new staff. Safety is a top priority for the residents, staff, and neighbors. We do believe in security, and we want to make sure. And that is actually where the designation flip-flopped back and forth. We were trying to balance how to keep the community's concerns in check. And so when Vlad had said lockdown facility, that was never our terminology. We didn't say lockdown, but what we did reference is that we would have fob key access to make sure that the kids were not just roaming freely, but we did not want that institutional designation, and that's when we began to work on getting it back to residential, which actually was the designation discussed at the pre-meeting application. Next is state licensing. The Department of Health and Welfare will require a comprehensive policies and procedures manual that we need to have in place And we will meet and exceed industry standards. State licensing of our facility will require it. We don't have any way around that. We have to meet that criteria. Residents will never be unsupervised. We will have 24-hour staffing around the clock, including night staff that is always awake and monitoring. We are required by the county to place a perimeter fence around the main building for added security. We really were in opposition to that because we wanted the animals to be able to continue to move freely, but if that is something that we're required to do, then we will do it. First responders, EMTs, nurses, CPR certified staff. We are going to have medical apparatus on site. We will have a medical station, and we will even have a life flight membership because of the response times. I did want to note that Google Maps indicates that fire and rescue is 22 minutes away, and Kootenai County Sheriff's is 28 minutes away. We are required by the, moving on down. Annexed into emergency services, Kootenai County Fire and Rescue was not concerned with the access or the road grade. They actually came out to our property and signed off on that. Community security cameras, communication radios, cell phones, game cams, and under rare conditions, drones will be used to monitor the activity, and that will be on our property only, and only if it's deemed necessary. Some of the residents had talked about an invasion. We're not going to be over their property. It's going to be specifically our property. Phones, landline service is available. There are green boxes out in that immediate area, even as close as right across the street. Cell phone service is good with AT&T and Verizon. We've actually been out at the property on Facebook and Instagram and just, different things where we've communicated back and forth with people. There are 5 game cameras out there right now that are dependent on cell phone coverage, and that has never been an issue. Emergency sat phones can also be used should we need those. Power boosters, Starlink. There's also a possible new cell tower in the area. A pre-planning meeting has already been conducted for a new cell tower to the east of our lot. And then we have excellent staff to resident ratios. The daytime will be between 6 to 8 staff per 24 students, depending on the activity, which is a 4-to-1 ratio, which is far greater than what the industry standard suggests. And then night staff is 3 to 4 per 24 residents, and that would be during sleeping hours at a 7-to-1 ratio. Emergency services, we've already talked a little bit about Kootenai County Fire and Rescue. The sheriff did have concerns with response time. We wanted to comment on that in that Camp Miveden, backside of Hayden Lake, Camp Easton and Harrison and other residential treatment programs that are remote got approved, and their response time would be equal to or greater than ours. We plan to have the following. First responders on site, medical apparatus, we already went over some of this, life flight, sat phones, game cams. As far as power outages are concerned and storms, the majority of us live on acreage anyhow in the county, and we are all well aware of the backup systems that will need to be in place, such as generators, so that won't be an issue. And we believe also that we would be an asset to the community due to the medical trained staff and medical apparatus on site. We would be willing to help our neighbors in the event of an emergency. The staffing for Living Water Youth Ranch, Ascent Counseling will provide the largest portion of counseling services for the youth ranch. And our treatment providers are licensed clinical professional counselors, all have master's level education, and we've all worked in the industry for many years and have a passion for working with youth. Licensed educators, first responders, and other professionals will be on staff. Staff to resident ratios, we already discussed that. All staff members will be professionally trained in safety measures, and staff training will be ongoing. And again, we'll be working with a security firm for that. Administrative offices will also be in town for intakes, conducting business with parents, and all other aspects of business functions. So we're not going to be having parents going to and fro, from the property. With regard to the concerns of runaways, our residents will have the 24-hour supervision, again, never unsupervised. Policies, procedures, and systems will be in place to prevent residents from leaving the facility. Our staff will routinely engage in deterrent education by discussing the dangers of wildlife, the rugged terrain, adverse weather conditions, the likelihood of getting caught before they ever even get off the property, and talking about the realities of North Idaho with neighbors who bear arms. If these kids walk away, they will likely be focused on getting back to friends, cell phones, computers, social media, boyfriends or girlfriends. They will not be hanging around the Wolf Lodge community to get caught. They're going to be trying to hightail it out of there. According to Ron Galletti, he was a program director for Oak Grove for 10 years. The incidence of residents running away was minimal, and nobody outside of the facility was ever hurt in that 10-year period. And his facility was high risk, not low risk like ours. And I do have a letter from him that I would like to enter into the record.
Thank you. Entered into the record as Exhibit HE 1005.
He may actually be on the Zoom call. He was going to try to make it. Roads, access, and traffic. Alder Creek is a county-maintained road. We live in North Idaho. We're going to run into road challenges with ice, and that's just what North Idaho is. Living Water Youth Ranch will have professional-grade equipment to maintain the private roads for access in all weather conditions. Tractors, rock spreaders, graders, snow thrower attachments, de-icers, and other equipment necessary to maintain the roads. The trees are largely overgrown on the road and needs to be widened to allow maximum road width for vehicles to pass, and that would be the private road. Living Water Youth Ranch will share the responsibility of road maintenance with other neighbors. 2 road experts have submitted bids for a new access road, which will allow us to enter the property below our current easement. Neither road builder was concerned with access or the grade. Gerald Archer of Kootenai County Fire and Rescue visited our site. He indicated that the road is wider than it looks and was not concerned with access or the grade. He felt that a couple of turnouts would allow vehicles to pass. He also indicated that we would be annexed into emergency services. Living Water Youth Ranch will also comply with all requirements set forth by the appropriate agencies. Traffic, East Side Highway District indicates in the findings report that traffic generated from our facility will be well below the threshold of a traffic impact study. The traffic will be well below the threshold of 50 cars per day that is considered high impact according to East Side District. We will also do our best to avoid staffing and shift changes at peak hours or when kids are getting out of school. Other treatment facilities in the area. Living Water Youth Ranch has been compared to other residential treatment facilities in the area, but ours serves a lower risk population and the structure is quite different. Example, this is according to Intercept's website. They allow clinically complex psychiatric profiles with medical challenges. We do not. They allow technology. We do not. They have shorter term stays. Their website indicates 90 days minimum, which means faster turnover and newer residents more frequently. They also have 150 beds for high risk severe clientele. Ours has 24 beds, low to moderate risk. Intercept does not have the same supervision and security measures in place. I personally see residents walking alone in my community. I live out in the Hudlow Rimrock area, and a former staff member said that her residents were able to move around unsupervised, but they were given a time to return or the staff would go and look for them. And she's actually here tonight and will comment. Intercept emergency response times to some locations are similar to our facility. They're a bit remote too. So Living Water does not serve high-risk populations, so not an apples to apples comparison. Other facilities, I spoke with Owen Baisden earlier this week actually from Turning Winds, and he stated that there has never been an incident at his facility in 20 years that has resulted in harm to the community. They have a 42-bed facility and their runaways are very infrequent. He said, with the right policies in place, and we treat kids well, so they don't need to run away. When I told him that we were being compared to Intercept, he said the same thing. They're a 150-bed huge organization with high-risk kids, and went on to say that our 24-bed low to moderate risk is not the same as Intercept, and there's his contact information. Kelly Johnson, Department of Health and Welfare, she's the licensing for residential facilities, shared that incidents of runaways from these types of facilities are typically located closer to town where they have access to gas stations, stores, bars, and areas where they can actually ask for rides. She did not see why, with proper policies in place, there would be concerns with children leaving Wolf Lodge because it is so remote and rugged. Other facilities, again, Ron Galletti, I already mentioned that. It's in that letter, so I'm going to skip that piece there. Megan from Project Patch did not have time to write a formal response. However, she did indicate that Intercept was not like their program in Garden Valley. She indicated that she would take the time to share some of their policies and procedures that work for them in the future. She didn't have time to comment, but she would definitely be one who can advise. Project Patch is a program that Living Water Youth Ranch is most closely modeled after, and we actually have somebody here tonight that has been a resident in Project Patch to share what his experience was. This is a picture of Garden Valley, Project Patch. We plan to have a similar looking facility in the sense of one story, just low profile. So why Wolf Lodge? Large remote acreage. We paid a premium for this lot because it is so remote, and it is 73 acres, which gives us room to really spread out. It is such a sparsely populated area with a lot of undeveloped land, really. It was close enough to town for our staffing and services, and we chose it because we wanted it to be less intrusive. So, you know, being in the middle of 73 acres should not have an impact on the immediate neighbors. Super private, nothing can be seen from the road. It's heavily treed on all of those borders. And like Vlad said, we have the National Forest on the entire west side. I-90 is steep, and the neighbor on the entire east border is in favor. She wrote a letter. And then the neighbor on the north border said that he would help if needed as he works for another residential treatment program in the area. I don't know where he stands today, but that was several months ago. The wilderness is a huge component of our program. Serenity for a reset where kids can unplug from the influences of the community. Therapy through recreation. We need recreational acreage for our residential program. Hiking trails, equestrian arena, experiential therapy, space for therapeutic gardening, raising animals and food, and other experiences that would not be possible in town. So we specifically chose this. We don't want to be in town. And nearly all programs like Living Water Youth Ranch, they are remote. The compatibility of land use with the comprehensive plan analysis. In reviewing compatibility, Living Water Youth Ranch aligns with most of the land use description. We are applying for a conditional use permit for the therapeutic component, which still closely matches as the recreational land in Wolf Lodge is necessary for the treatment that we provide, for the type of treatment that we provide. We are compatible in the following. Recreation, a large portion of the land is necessary for therapeutic recreation, nature walks, group counseling in the wilderness, therapeutic team building activities, equine therapy, forestry, timber exemptions with a plan to grow, harvest, and maintain timber, farming, raising animals, agriculture, cultivation of soil, growing crops, greenhouses, etc. And rural location is necessary for our treatment approach, which depends on country living to deliver optimal therapeutic services. Our land usage is compatible with this community, ranch-style country living, homesteading, recreation, raising food, enjoying the land, and other activities that would be similar to our neighbors. Land use code, applications for conditional use permits. We feel that Living Water Youth Ranch is far less intrusive and disruptive than these people and these types of businesses that can apply for conditional use permits. Yeah, those are the types of things that could also be on that land. Note, at our pre-planning meeting, Community Development designated Living Water Youth Ranch as a residential care facility for 9+ residents. We did not choose that original designation. Living Water Youth Ranch will be much less intrusive than dividing the land into 5 to 10 acre parcels, which has also been discussed, or a wedding venue where we know that people drink at weddings, and if road safety is a concern, drunk drivers with people drinking at weddings and traffic. If not here, then where? This is the question that we all keep coming back to. We have looked at multiple locations. None of them met the criteria. Too close to neighbors, too far from emergency services, staffing challenges, being too far out, severe roads, icier roads like Harrison, Segal, and Kellogg are areas that we have looked. Wolf Lodge is the perfect location, sparsely populated, lots of bare, undeveloped land, large acreage parcels. The majority of the surrounding parcels are currently undeveloped according to the CUP findings report. Again, we discussed the borders. Emergency services can get to us in a reasonable amount of time. Roads are manageable, typical North Idaho country roads. Easily accessible for staffing needs, not too far out, not located within an area of impact according to CUP findings report. Addendums. I want to point out that the original narrative that was submitted indicated that our facility was 21,600 square feet. This was a miscalculation that was done on those plans. The addendums were submitted, the actual square footage of the main building is showing 13,900 as it stands, and you'll notice that we have plus or minus because we're not completely done with the plans that we're putting into place, but it's going to be nowhere near that 21.6. Originally a residential classification, we already went through a lot of that. The addendum was submitted there as Vlad had discussed. Security measures and language contained within was updated, indicating that alarmed emergency exits will be available for the youth's self-preservation, and fob keys will no longer be used. So that was one of the concerns that we were overcoming. This is our main building sketch by Architects West, and it kind of gives you an idea there. That whole middle section is the multi-purpose commercial kitchen, chapel, classrooms, and then on either side you've got boys' dorm on the left, girls' dorm on the right. This is a dorm sketch that just shows the different bedrooms and the layout. And then building dimensions, I broke it down. The boys' dorm, it shows bedrooms, gathering space, and laundry, bathroom, storage. Girls' dorm, we broke that down square footage. That's how I arrived at that 13.9 number. So as Vlad had mentioned, the sheriff was not solicited for comment, and our packet went out to all agencies on July 25th, and that gave those agencies 2.5 months to respond and ask us questions. Kootenai County sheriffs did not get that same luxury of being able to ask questions, so they did have to write a letter pretty hastily within like less than a day. So we did go and meet with Captain Deek on October 19th, which was yesterday, and he did acknowledge that he had less than a day to respond, leaving him no time to review or understand our project. He said that he still hasn't had a chance to thoroughly review it, and we both agree that this was an oversight by community development, and we do feel that it had a significant impact on our project here. The other 10 agencies that approved our facility, again, were given 2.5 months to respond, and they did approve with conditions, but they were all reasonable conditions that we were expecting. I'm going to skip down. We did not get the same opportunity. We did. We felt that it had a big impact on us. So let's see here. Again, down at the bottom, they had concerns with response time also, and we relisted some of those as being equal or longer response times to our facility. These are the agencies that approved. There was one agency denial, actually two, with community development, and one that's still pending. So that is all that we have at this particular segment, and thank you. And can I submit this into the evidence after I get done with my final?
Is that the same thing that you had up here?
It is, but then we have the final remarks at the end in our 15-minute period, so
Okay,
at some
sure.
point I do want to.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And Vlad, you have comment?
If I may, do you need me to come up to the podium?
Yes, please.
I'd like to clarify in the record what Ms. Scott just stated is I forgot to mention in my initial presentation that staff issued a recommendation with concerns and recommendation for denial in advance of the sheriff's late comment that came in late. I have also advised Ms. Scott that unfortunately, because of the concerns with respect to compatibility, remote location, a lack of response time, issue with the comp plan, it's unlikely that our position would have changed with the sheriff's latest comment. So I want to make that very clear into the record. However, we advise Ms. Scott and her crew that we're open to further discussion at the hearing, or if she wants to request that the project be placed on hold to reevaluate staff's concerns, we're welcome to address those or assist her in that regard as well.
Thank you. Ms. Scott, I have a few questions. If you'd come to the podium, please. And I apologize, my knowledge and experience with this kind of facility is extremely limited. How high is the demand for this type of facility?
Incredibly high. I mean, we have an opioid epidemic, a mental health crisis in our country. We've got a lot of local facilities that cannot even get their children into mental health treatment. I personally have a year-long wait list. Other therapists in my facility have 9-month wait lists, and I know that a lot of my colleagues are in the same boat. You cannot get kids the treatment that they need, and a lot of them are spiraling in the community. So the demand is pretty high.
But isn't part of the reason you've got these wait lists is because you don't have the staff?
No, that is
You
not
have plenty
true.
of clinical people to deal with it.
Yeah.
Here,
Our office can only contain 5 people, like physically, we can't add any more staff to our existing location, for us personally.
but there are unemployed clinical providers who, if you had space,
We just interviewed one yesterday.
and where do you get funding for a facility like this?
So we are going to be completely nonprofit. We're not going to be taking any state or federal dollars. It is all private funding, and one of our primary benefactors is here tonight.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Where am I in favor? We have one list for people who are opposed, and I heard that there was another group who also were making up a list. Are they opposed as well? Or are they in favor? Yeah. Thank you. You don't say whether you're opposed, in favor, or neutral.
Oh, opposed.
Okay. All right. So we'll start with the, sorry, this is a heavy paperwork evening. Those who are in favor. And I apologize in advance for mispronouncing your name or misreading it. So I have Lisa McMillan, who is in favor and does not wish to speak. Kelsey Schmidt, in favor, and it doesn't say whether you wish to speak or not. I guess that's a not. Carla Zimmerman, in favor, doesn't say what you wish to do. I guess that's not speaking. Diego Madrid, in favor. Again, no box checked. Jackson Interman, in favor, may wish to speak. Yes, please. And state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Jackson Lanterman, and my address is 8395 North Scottsworth Street, Post Falls, Idaho 83854. I am in favor of this facility, this project. I'm the lead chaplain at the Juvenile Detention Center here in Coeur d'Alene, and I run Juvenile Justice Outreach, a local nonprofit that supports the youth that are on probation and diversion in our community. And I would like to concur with Ms. Scott. The need is incredible in our community. And as we see the population growth continue, we're only going to see this need increase. And the youth that I work with are the ones that have spiraled out of control. And if there was a way that we could better step into their lives at an earlier point and help divert them from the path that they're on, I believe that we could solve, let me retreat, not solve, but we could reduce the number of youth that get to the point where they're incarcerated. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Devin Zimmerman, in favor. Julie Doty, in favor, wishes to speak.
My name's Julie Doty, 702 North 4th Street, Coeur d'Alene. I am in favor, and I appreciate the gentleman's comments that just spoke. I didn't hear his name. I did not recall his name. I've been an attorney in this community for 22 years, 7 years as a prosecuting attorney, and doing nothing but family law cases since then. We have a tremendous need for a program like this. I appreciate your comments to Ms. Scott, wondering and acknowledging that perhaps you're not as familiar with this type of a facility that she's trying to get up and going. The need that we have, there are so many kids and so many families, the divorce and custody cases that I do, that can be redirected and could benefit from a program like this before they fall off the rails and end up in a much worse position is unbelievable. We do not have the ability to utilize these resources in this community. We are failing. We are failing our children. We are failing our youth. We are not providing types of facilities like this that can redirect them in their behavior and help the families that are in need. There are families that are in need to have their kids redirected and get the assistance and the help they need. This would be an amazing program. I did not intend to speak tonight when I came. I intended to come and listen. I was very disappointed to see people were checking a box opposed before they even heard this presentation. Ms. Scott did an amazing presentation. She answered a ton of questions. She answered a ton of questions I had before I even sat down to listen. To check a box opposed without having an open mind and have the ability to sit here and listen, I would guess that every single person that checked opposed learned something new that they did not know before walking in here. And that would only be if they had an open mind. So I am in favor. I do think we need a facility like this, and I think some of the people that have checked opposed, I would imagine if they went and spoke to Ms. Scott, they would probably have their concerns alleviated, or they would probably have a better idea and understanding as to why a facility like this would be of community, would be of benefit, to the community. I'm not exactly understanding what happened with the Kootenai County Sheriff here. I've heard the comments about that, but that seems to me massively disappointing that you've got opposed up there and they had 24 hours, 48 hours to weigh in and respond. Ms. Scott should have had an opportunity, or her team should have had an opportunity to address concerns before there's opposed. I don't know the process relative to the approved or opposed on the green sheets, but if you're going to be tabulating those up, I wonder if the people that were opposed would be given an opportunity to potentially change their opinion and be in favor after hearing this presentation. If not, I would suggest that perhaps they didn't have an open mind. I do think we need the facility, and I think they should be given the nod on this.
Thank you. Jordan House, in favor, may wish to speak. No. Elisa House, in favor. Thank you. Ricky Evans, in favor, does not wish to speak. Natalie Evans, in favor, does not wish to speak. Debbie McGillespie, in favor, does not wish to speak. Shane Zaring, in favor, does not wish to speak. Carrie MacArthur, in favor, does not wish to speak. And that, I think, is all my in favors. Did you fill out? Yeah? One moment, please. We will review, here, will you go through that stack? Oops. Oh. Well, yeah, evidently they got buried. Okay. Got it. Sorry. Back in business here. Wayne Burnham, in favor, wishes to speak.
I am in favor. I work as a pastor in our community. My name is Wayne Burnham. My address is 6258 West Irish Circle, City of Rathdrum. As a pastor, I work with families and their children, and the epidemic is great. There are so many needs for mental health, from depression to anxiety, addictions for children, both in families that have done a great job raising their children and in families who need additional help. My daughter, for example, is in need of some mental help and some opportunity to deal with her anxiety and depression. I had to go outside of the state of Idaho to find that help for her. Both of my daughters have had friends in the last year commit suicide within 2 weeks of one another. So the trauma that they have from losing friends and the trauma that they have mentally to cope with the pressures of school and culture is very, very high. And so both of my daughters, my wife and I, are clients of Ms. Scott, and she has helped us and our family tremendously, not only from a family aspect, but personally in how I help deal with others. And so we are in favor as a family. And I hope, as the lady who said before us, that people that walked in here with the attitude of being in opposition would hear not only the heart of what she and her staff want to do in this facility, but the heart of the people who have suffered and seen their children suffer because of the crisis that they are facing. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Marcus Anderson, in favor, may wish to speak.
My name is Marcus Anderson, 17442 South Painted Rose Road, Worley, Idaho, 83876. I'm here tonight in support of this project, primarily because of Ms. Scott and the need of this community. The benefactor she spoke about is myself. The money that's coming for this is coming from myself personally, and I'm 100% committed to this cause. So I was born and raised in Idaho, on the Newport Priest River area. Grew up with a lot of kids that needed this kind of help early, and I think we found the right spot, and we've got the right people in place to make this happen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry. Darren Melton, in favor, doesn't say if you wish to speak or not. Marissa McCreary, in favor, doesn't say whether you want to speak or not. Chris McCreary, in favor, may wish to speak.
Thanks for nailing that name. Most people don't.
Every now and again.
My name's Chris McCreary. I live at 8179 Split Rail Avenue. I think it's West Split Rail Avenue. We just moved. It's in Rathdrum, Idaho, 83858. I call myself, I guess, a longtime resident. I've been here for 18 years now. I'm the general manager at Triple Play Family Fun Park. I have had the pleasure and the privilege of employing over 1,800 employees since 2007. That was the closest number I could come up with. The large majority of those children are between the ages of 15 and 19. I can honestly say in the last year, it's been one of the most trying times of my life, I have had more children in my office with mental health crises than I have in the past 16 years prior, combined. I have had, it's a real problem. There is a problem out there, and whether I don't want to say it's the parents' fault, I don't want to say that they're not doing their job. They may not be equipped to handle everything that's going on with technology and social media and bullying and just the state of the world. There is a huge need for this. I am fully in support of this, and I have full faith in Jennifer and this project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tracy Scott? Is it Tracy? In favor, does not wish to speak. Jennifer Scott? In favor?
I've already spoken.
Right. Jeff Doty, in favor, wishes to speak.
Jeff Doty, 12048 South Diamond Road in Harrison. I just wanted to shed some light on how this all came about and the process leading up to deciding that this was the right property. We were very, very proactive from day one on this. I'm a real estate agent. I'm one of the board of directors, so I'm obviously in favor of this. I had put out a request looking for the right property, and one of my colleagues in the business, the property owner, Shane Zaring over here, responded and said, "Hey, I personally own a piece of property. What's your client looking for?" And after explaining to him the project, he had no intention of selling the property and was very much on board and excuse me, in support of the project right away. We weren't sure, right out of the gate that this was the right property. We took the time to go out to the property, to meet all the neighbors. I was personally involved with a pre-development meeting, with the county as far as what does this look like to achieve a conditional use permit on this. We invited Gerald Archer out. We had the well drillers out. I mean, we really looked at this from all angles. And it really checked, in looking all across Kootenai County and even up into Sandpoint, I mean, this checked the boxes across the board with just the characteristics of the land, adjacent to U.S. Forest Service, adjacent to I-90, the main property owner to the east, Jill and Dave Spiker. We met them on site. They're very much in support of the project. You have a letter written from them. The other two neighbors, the gentleman that lives towards the top of the hill, we stood there on the road and he knew exactly what we were doing, and he flat out told me to my face that he's not opposed to this project. You should be able to do what you want with your own property, and aside from the road being widened and being, more safe for his family, that he would not stand here and be a naysayer as far as being against this project. I think his mind has shifted from that. We will see, because I know he will speak. And the gentleman right across the street, he'll most likely be speaking as well. We took the time to meet the neighbors and the community and assure them that this wasn't going to be intrusive into their lifestyle. All the quality controls that we are putting in place that my sister spoke about and whatnot. And so, prior to even putting this property under contract, we took the time to meet with the county, meet with the neighbors, have a lot of the agencies come out, and Gerald Archer being one, that said he would annex the property, into emergency services, and he spoke about the road, that in widening the road, doing turnouts, that he, would sign off on access.
That was your 3-minute notification.
Sorry about that. I should look at the clock.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Heidi Hirschley, in favor, wishes to speak.
Address is 3832 Wayne Avenue in Hayden. I have a daughter who's now 29 years old. In 2011, it was national news that my daughter was beat up, stripped naked on a school bus, and the next 10 years of her life changed dramatically. She gained 100 pounds. She turned to drugs. She turned to alcohol, and her life completely changed. I wish that there was a facility that I could have put her in who would help her deal with her traumas and her triggers and help us as a family to not have to go through 3 attempts of suicide. She was kidnapped. She was raped. She was running with the wrong crowd. But I'm honored and privileged to stand here today to tell you that she's a productive citizen of society. But I hope that the people here who are opposing, that their children never have to go through what my daughter went through. She was National Honor Society, graduated 9th year class. She did food drives for her school. She was dual enrolled in college. She was National Honor Society. She came from a good Christian home. But because of the choices of other children, what they did to her, and the lack of what the school didn't do, changed the trajectory of her life. She'll never be the same child again. My sweet, kind, caring, loving child grew up very fast. Now, had I been able to have the opportunity to have a facility, I tried. The closest facility that would take her would be in Montana, and it wasn't for her type of trauma that she had gone through. So I'm definitely in favor of this. I would hope that people would reconsider. They said no without even knowing what they were saying no to. So please ask questions. We're here to help. We want to be great neighbors. We want to be an asset to the community. We want to be good neighbors, and we would love to help and not to hurt other children. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Patrick MacArthur, in favor, wishes to speak.
My name is Patrick MacArthur, 204 West 14th Street, Post Falls, 83854. And I'm speaking in support of Living Water Youth Ranch. I'm an associate chaplain with Juvenile Justice Outreach, and we serve the Kootenai County Juvenile Detention Center. I've been a mentor to youth at Juvenile Correction Center Lewiston, State Prison for Youth. I'm also a youth leader. And in that time, I've seen the desperation and hopelessness of both youth and parents seeking help in areas of mental health, behaviors, and addictions. I myself struggle with anxiety, depression, and PTSD, so I know firsthand what it feels like. What most people don't understand is addiction and bad behavior is not the problem. They are answers used to deal with deeper issues, however misguided and flawed decisions. If those deeper issues are not dealt with, the addictions and poor choices will continue. The leadership behind Living Water Youth Ranch are not looking to run these youth through a program like cattle to generate profits. They have diligently worked to develop a team who are focused on giving youth and their families the best possible future. The location of the ranch is amazing, and the property itself, it's far enough away from the distractions, but close enough to access services and opportunities of the community. As a society, we are clamoring for options in handling the challenges of today's youth. Living Water Youth Ranch is one of those options that will positively impact not only the youth, but the community as a whole. And it will not put additional burden on a public system that's already past its breaking point. One of the things you talked about was having counselors for these youth. There's a difference between having a counselor you see once or twice a week and a residential facility for these where they're ongoing, where they're learning how to live differently. I'd like to leave you with this thought. I once asked the youth in juvenile detention what they wanted most. And initially I was surprised by their answers, but then it broke my heart. Number one, to be loved and cared for by somebody. And two, to be different than the way they are that got them where they're at now. I wholeheartedly believe Living Water Ranch will provide both of these. Thank you.
Thank you. James Doty, in favor, may wish to speak.
My name is James Doty. I live at 3400 East Hayden Lake Road in Hayden, Idaho 83835. I am obviously in total support of this particular proposal. My background is I was the senior principal for VHA, Volunteer Hospitals of America, 1,500 hospitals throughout the United States. As a senior principal, I was exposed to this type of exposure throughout the country, and the need for this type of facility is so huge, and it's not just here, it's throughout the entire country. And so to stress my point, yesterday, or maybe the day before yesterday, in the Coeur d'Alene Press, there was a front page article on Heritage Health just receiving a $4 million grant to address just mental health for the patients of Heritage Health and in the surrounding community. You have Kootenai Health, who has abandoned their mental health program. You've had others that have shut themselves down. So this is where the demand for these services comes from, and it comes almost in the last 6 or 7 months, just in abundance. This is why you have such huge wait lines and all the different counseling offices for even getting a counselor to see you. And when those people see those counselors, there are patients that do need this type of a facility. And as an asset to this community, it is so huge, and one that most communities would kill to get. And we now have it available to us today. So I just don't see how anybody could take an opposition to it. I know there are people. I was very impressed with Mrs. Scott's breakdown of the 97 negatives. And when you actually analyze those negatives, I really don't know how much real opposition there is or how valid it is. But I can tell you that that opposition doesn't weigh in comparison to the need that we're going to service by making an approval on this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Doty, in favor, does not wish to speak. Jen Burnham, in favor, may wish to speak.
Hello, my name is Jen Burnham. I live at 6258 West Ivor Circle, Rathdrum, Idaho 83858. As a parent of 2 teenage kids, struggle with being great kids. They get straight A's. They work. They're good kids, but they live in a culture that is very difficult. And one of my kids would have benefited from one of these, but there's nothing here. I have looked and tried, and we've had to go look outside of state to get some help for my kids. They've had a lot of trauma in their life. My daughter was the last one to talk to her friend before she killed herself. And she carries the weight of what could I have done differently to help her. And she's 14 years old. These kids are not bad kids. They're not going to do terrible things. These are kids that are hurting and going through hard things in life. Things that their parents committed suicide. Things that their parents are getting divorced, or that their parents are now transgendering and they don't know how to cope with all of the things that they're facing. And they are depressed and they're anxious and they're hurting and they don't know what to do and how to do it. I think something like this would benefit our community more than anybody knows. My kids are in high school, and my kids come home and they share a lot of things, and I'm very thankful that they share with me. But as a parent, my heart breaks on a daily basis, hearing the things that my kids have to hear and how to try to process and go through and know what to do with it. And it's really, really hard. And I don't know, as a person in the community, that you cannot look around and see the need. Go to the park, go to the grocery store. You see kids and people that are hurting and that are broken and that don't know what to do and that need help. And there is nothing available in Idaho. Like I said, we have 2 kids. They're straight A students. They are hard workers. My daughter just got a raise at her job because she's doing a fabulous job. We have been seeing counselors, but we have had to go outside of Idaho State, which is very hard and inconvenient as parents that work to try to put food on the table and pay bills with the inflation and all of the other things that are going on. And it's been a year-long process of getting her help in a different state because there's nothing here available. And so I would just like people to consider the benefits of this and know that there is a huge need. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Peyton Kussler, in favor, does not wish to speak. Do you wish to speak? I do. Okay.
So for the record, my name is Peyton Kussler. No, it's okay. Everybody gets it wrong. I'm a resident of Idaho, Coeur d'Alene area. I live at 1046 North 17th Street, Coeur d'Alene 83814. I have been a resident of this area since birth. I was born at Kootenai Medical Center, grew up in Rathdrum with two very loving parents. Unfortunately, they couldn't be here this evening. I am a statistic. I became a statistic on March 25th, 2012. My high school sweetheart's corpse was pulled from Spirit Lake after he had been strangled and beaten to death. It caused undue trauma in my life, and much like Miss Hershey's daughter, I turned to illegal substances. I turned to unhealthy behaviors. I turned to anything that would make it stop hurting. That was 10 years ago. I only within the last few years was able to get my life back on track. I'm a mother now, and if I would have had something like this available to me, my parents would have had me there in a heartbeat, and it could have changed my life and kept me from experiencing further trauma due to my negative choices and the coping mechanisms that I chose to employ to mask my pain and trauma. Like I said, I am a mother now. I have two beautiful children. And in the world that we live in today, there is undue trauma that they will undoubtedly and inevitably be exposed to. Something like this could mean the difference between life and death for not just my children, but for a lot of people in this community. I don't want to see any more reports about kids overdosing in high school. I don't want to see any more reports of children committing suicide because of whatever existential trauma that they're experiencing at the time. This could save people's lives, and I truly don't know how anyone could oppose saving our youth. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Christy Doty, in favor, does not wish to speak. Nathan Scott, in favor, may wish to speak.
Nathan Scott, 1046 North 17th Street. In the slide, my mother stated that there was a resident from Garden Valley, Project Patch, that's me. If my mom and dad didn't put me in that place, my mom stated one time, she said, "I'd rather see my son alive than dead and on the street." I don't know if all the people that are opposed to this are just blind, but if they want Kootenai County to start looking like Portland, Oregon, Spokane, Washington, California, keep opposing it, because the problem will just be dragged out to the street. My experience at Project Patch gave me life skills, a success story. The runaways in a little over 1 year period that I was there, 4. None of them made it off the property. I was one of them. And then going back to the slide, they say that it's too far away from, for an emergency response team. Garden Valley is an hour away from Boise. Not one incident required an emergency vehicle. They say that it's too far away, but then they're worried about, destruction on other people's property. That contradicts itself. You don't want to destroy people's property, you want them closer to town. I mean, that's kind of stupid. But I'm in favor for this. It saved my life. I was an IV user. I'd probably be dead.
Thank you for your testimony. Samantha Yinger, in favor, may wish to speak.
great job with my name. It's a hard name. My name is Samantha Yeamer. I live at 3345 Brownstone Court, Post Falls, Idaho, 83854. I am on staff at a local church. I oversee and lead our mental health and wellness initiative, and I am for this. There is the need for mental health and wellness is overwhelming and is, there's a quote by Desmond Tutu that says that we need not to stop just pulling people from the river, but to go upriver and to find out why they're falling in. Part of the reason why people are falling in is because of isolation, is because of lack of resources. Part of the reason why people are falling in is because of addictions to things like cell phones and video games that are destroying our ability to relate. Ms. Scott's proposal puts people back into where they're not in isolation, where they're actually figuring out how to form community. They're restoring places of where they're communing with nature. We are a people who are disconnected from the earth and that we live in artificial senses, and it has impacted our patterns of thinking. I think that Jennifer Scott has done due diligence because she wants to do no harm. So her idea to do no harm means what is the best that I can do? Looking at how can I be a good neighbor? What agencies will I need, and how will I impact the places where I am proposing this? Her due diligence demonstrates that her heart to do no harm but to bring good, not to just this population, but to the community that she is a part of. There are parents who don't know what to do with their kids. There are kids who are desperately saying, I don't know what to do. And Jennifer and her team want to come forward and to say, let's give us a place where we can begin to impact 24 lives. But it's not just 24 lives. It's actually beyond that. It's legacies that they want to change and create. You have some win stories here. They want some more win stories where there's more people. They want to do it also not in a way that just benefits those 24 or those coming residents, but also the community that's around. It's a community-minded project, looking at what that impact is and how it will benefit the rest of the community and not just Living Youth Ranch. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is that all the in favors? That's all I had. All right, I'm going to go to neutral. Mark Rome, neutral. Oops, you donated your time. But both of the donated are opposing. Okay. Trevor Stone, neutral, wishes to speak.
My name is Trevor Stone. I live out at 17023 East Alder Creek Road. I am the neighbor to the north, I would say. The reason why I say I am neutral is because I used to work at a facility at Intercept. I know that there are needs for this type of thing, for this type of progress in this state. The other reason why I'm neutral and not for is because I don't believe the location is the best due to what I've experienced at the facility that I worked at. I worked at many locations in Intercept. I was out at the cabin that they call the cabin, where they made sure that the kids didn't have the electronics or anything to that aspect. A lot of the same type of structure that this facility is offering. The difference is the youth ranch is a lower risk facility. That being said, I've dealt with students that are low risk and have flown off the deep end, and then I've dealt with students that are high risk and have come down to ground And it's merely the fact that you can talk to students, you can get on their level, become friends to these students, not just another statistical person that will influence their life. You become more than that. And I became more than that for many of those students. They all looked up to me. Did I have people run off? Yes. We've had 2, 3, 4, 5 in a week. And I was one of the individuals that had to go and get those students. So I understand the need, I understand the want, I understand the families, get all of that. My main concern is the location, and being a resident there for the past 11 years, I do know that the roads are not as clearly black and white maintained as East Highway District would like to make it sound. It is a bypass for the freeway. There is extra traffic that way. They say that they would want their students, or the students would want to get back to a town. What makes us think that those students would not use one of our vehicles if they knew how to drive to get to those towns? And in that aspect, that would be a malicious thing that would happen to the properties. That's all I've got.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all the neutrals that I have. Okay. So now we're going to move on to the opposed. I'm going to do the groups first. I need to call out every name that's put their name on this list. You need to indicate that you're here for me, because that's part of the rules. And when I get to the individual sheets, you've probably filled one of those out as well. You will not be able to speak at that point. So if I don't know you've already put your name on the list, because it's a lot of names to remember, just know that you're supposed to say, I was on the list, or some other notification. Okay, the first group I have is Bill Jasper's group. They are opposed. The names are Roger Scheffel? What was it? Sethel. Thank you. Rebecca Stettel? Paul Hander? Carrie Rome? Okay. Mark Rome? Brandon Stone? Michael Burns? Emily Moyer? And Michael Burns. Whoops, one was Junior. Okay. So your speaker, your representative is Bill Jasper. And how much time do we have for a group? 15 minutes.
Thank you. I was told earlier to prepare a 3-minute presentation, so I will take it from there. My name is Bill Jasper, William F. Jasper. I live at 11401 East Kempton Road in Wolf Lodge with my wife, Carmen Jasper. I'm a native North Idahoan and have lived in the Wolf Lodge area for the last 11 years. There are many reasons why I oppose situating the Living Waters Mental Institution at the proposed site, but in the limited time available, I will focus only on public safety as it relates to response time for law enforcement, fire, and emergency medical services. I have 3 real incidents that occurred on my property that challenge the hopelessly optimistic response times given by the development proponents. My property is about 4 miles nearer to the I-90 freeway than the proposed at-risk youth facility would be. First incident, on October 5, 2017, one of my nephews was sawing firewood next to my house when a massive 3-foot diameter, 1,000-pound log rolled on him, pinning his arm to the ground and very nearly rolling over the top of him. Thanks to our neighbors who responded immediately and in force, We were able to get the log off my nephew. It was a life-threatening situation, and pull him to safety. The emergency medical team arrived about 35 minutes after we had called 911. Second incident at 2:30 a.m. on March 20, 2019, we had a house fire, middle of the night. Fire responders from 5 different departments began arriving about 35 to 40 minutes after our call. The third incident occurred during the rebuild of our home after the fire. A carpenter who was framing the chimney chase fell approximately 18 feet from the peak of the roof and was seriously injured. Again, it was about 35 to 40 minutes until the medical team arrived. I have no complaints about these response times for these incidents. It takes time to get out to rural areas. Those of us who live out here know that. I have nothing but the highest regard for these emergency professionals, and I commend them for their excellent service. However, these 3 incidents, and my neighbors can all augment this with many incidents of their own, point up important facts. The proposed youth institution is not only several miles past my house, ergo a much longer response time. The Alder Creek Road, which the emergency vehicles would have to use, is very narrow, winding, and at times a rough road. So the response time would be at least an additional 15 minutes in good conditions. And here is the vital point. All of these responses to emergencies at my property occurred during good road conditions. Again, it was 35 to 40 minutes real experience, not 20 minutes. However, we all know that rain, snow, ice, slush dramatically impact response time and would add many more minutes to those response times, where each added minute can become a matter of life or death. Facilities such as the institution proposed by Living Water are notorious for requiring frequent law enforcement, fire, and emergency medical response. Not only would the youth and staff residing at this facility be endangered by this lengthy response time, but so would local Wolf Lodge residents should any of these troubled teens escape and engage in criminal activity in the area. Now, safety is the top priority. I was glad to hear that that is also the top priority of those who plan to build this. I am a husband, father, grandfather, and 3 of my grandchildren, all preschool, live just a short distance in Wolf Lodge, across the road from the proposed facility. We heard from one of the proponents that they met with all the neighbors and the people in the community. I have not found any of my neighbors, and a great number of them have shown up here, who had any knowledge about this before about a week or 2 ago. Most, in fact, talked to many neighbors who didn't find out about it till just a couple of days ago. Many of them didn't find out about it until after the time period was already over to put in comments. So I find that interesting and somewhat distressing. But as to safety and security, we are told in the proposal that they will have, quote, transporters to bring resistant patients to the facility, end quote. Now, what does that entail, and what are resistant patients? We have heard that walkaways and escapes at these facilities are rare. I find that very hard to believe. In my written comments, which I submitted, I mentioned that I have been a counselor at over 50 summer camps for youth over the course of about 30 plus years. And these, as I pointed out, were not at-risk youth. They were not troubled teens. They were not difficult children. They came from good homes, and they were basically good kids. However, in almost every case at our camps, we had people, young kids, who walked away. These are high school students, walked away from camp, ran away from camp, or broke out in groups and decided to do often dangerous things. For kids, they wanted to go climb trees, climb cliffs, swim across lakes, swim across rivers, take one of the counselor's cars and go into town. That happened over and over again. And this is with a low ratio and with parental involvement, parents being there as counselors as well. So that happens all the time in regular camps. This was all over the country in a dozen different states. I also submitted a number of articles, which I gave links to, showing escapes from at-risk youth facilities all over the country. And some of these were low-risk or supposedly no-risk facilities where the student, patient, youth had no record. That is, they had no criminal record, because we know today that many times prosecutors will not charge teenagers, even young teenagers, so they won't charge them with crimes, and it won't even, so they don't have a record. And even those that do have a record, it's sealed, and so it's very difficult to find out exactly who is going into these places. And some of those who have escaped, who have committed heinous crimes, have been those that had no record. So we have many large families here, you probably will hear from some of them, who live in the vicinity, and it is a very real concern on their part, and it shouldn't be brushed off or diminished by those who say that, well, we have this example here or this example here of a supposed period of time where there have been very minimal escapes and no serious consequences. Ms. Scott made a point that a number of opponents do not live in the Wolf Lodge area. However, I would make these 3 points regarding that. As far as I know, the opponents from Post Falls, Rathdrum, Rose Lake, etc., who registered opposition to this are from Kootenai County. They're Kootenai County residents, and this is a county proposal. Number 2, many additional Wolf Lodge residents, as I said, would have registered opposition, would have given comments. In fact, I was given one tonight by one of the people who did register here. He didn't have time to get it in beforehand. He asked me to submit this into the record.
Entered into the record as Exhibit HE 1006.
Number 3, it is my understanding that Ms. Scott and other principals also do not live in Wolf Lodge. And it appears from tonight, from all the testimony, not a single one of those testifying in favor of it live in Wolf Lodge. So I don't think we can discount the opponents who do not live in Wolf Lodge as being of no consequence. I yield up the remainder of my time to others who may wish to speak.
Thank you very much. Okay, my next group, the group representative is Mark Mathis. And I'm going to read the names. Mark Mathis, Carrie Mathis, yes, Samuel Mathis, thank you, Lorraine Burton, Bettina Whipple, Sharon Ellsberud? No, not here? Okay. Nick Beckett, Cassie Ryder, Stephanie Rose, Mark Moyer, Mimi Murphy. Yes? No? Yes, thank you. Okay, Mark?
Thank you, Madam Hearing Examiner. My name is Mark Mathis, and I live at 17028 East Alder Creek Road in Coeur d'Alene. I, in fact, am the only resident who would actually share the driveway. So the driveway where this proposed facility turns in is actually my driveway that leads to my permanent residence. I think it's interesting that so far, all the proposals you've heard for have all discussed the need for mental health facilities. However, this referendum is more on, are we going to allow this facility in the Wolf Lodge area? I too am a Christian, and yet I oppose this. I've had children with mental health issues. I oppose this. I'm not going to stand here in front of you and tear up, but I've had a son commit suicide. So I fully understand what the need for these kind of facilities is. I did notice that, like he said, every single person was not a Wolf Lodge resident. So respectfully, Wolf Lodge residents, if you are a full-time, you live in Wolf Lodge, and you are opposed to this, raise your hand. If you are a full-time Wolf Lodge resident and you are for this facility, raise your hand.
I thought we're not supposed to engage.
Okay, but I'm just making a point, is that this facility is thinking about taking something in the Wolf Lodge area and basically allowing a facility and doing the best possible way to fit this in the disability word of the conditional use permit. I personally served our country as a United States Air Force pilot for 21 years. So I understand freedom. I have 200 combat hours over Iraq, and I moved to North Idaho specifically because of what this area stands for. I am the neighbor that Jeff referenced, saying that people should be allowed to do with what they want with their property. I did say that, but what he failed to say was you shouldn't impact all the other residences around you. Especially the county shouldn't allow to kind of change a little bit of the zoning to allow somebody to do what they want if it's going to impact all the neighboring properties. Of course, when I bought my house, my realtor, because I'm a realtor too, we looked at all the surrounding zoning, so I kind of knew what I was getting into. And I've helped several people either sell or buy land in Wolf Lodge, and we also look, and I can assure people, hey, this is residential, this is agricultural, this is what you can expect. And I've had several people ask me, well, can they build this here? Can they do this there? And I always refer to what the county's zoning says. So I think we're kind of asking the county to make an exception to the way it is zoned right now and allow a special facility to come in. Well, then we need to get off of emotion and talk about some facts, because I think that's also very important to look at the truth. They mentioned it's next to the National Forest. Absolutely it is. There's some benefits to that, which they have highlighted. What they did not highlight is Alder Creek and plenty of North Idaho residents, we hunt that National Forest. We target practice both day and night in that National Forest. I looked up the rules for the National Forest, and you can shoot as close as 150 yards to structures. So you're saying they want to build a mental health facility within 150 yards of any time somebody wants to shoot guns. Kids are on horses, sleeping at 1 o'clock in the morning. Gunfire's going off. And that is fully allowed by the law. So that's something that wasn't discussed about when it's near a national forest. Let's talk about the access to the proposed facility. You know, all these people come out and they say, we've looked at the driveway. We think it's good. Okay, these are people who visit it maybe once or twice a year. I have driven that driveway. My family has driven that driveway every day for the 10 years that I have lived there. So, and I'm a retired Air Force officer. You're getting the truth from me, ma'am. That driveway often is drivable. There's many times, though, that I have to chain up my vehicles, that we have to park cars down at the bottom. I have seen more cars on the ditch from both my family and from visitors. You go down that driveway, at best, there are times you're riding the anti-lock brakes down the driveway, and there's zero ability to stop. If you're coming up the driveway after the bridge, people don't know this, but we have to floor it to get the speed to come up after that driveway. Our traction control is going off, and there's no stopping. If you stop, you're actually going to slide backwards down the hill. So I would say right now, the driveway, the turnouts, how do you turn out? That presumes that somebody can stop and back up to a pullover. That doesn't happen multiple times throughout the winter. I take care of my driveway. I plow it. I gravel it. But inevitably, it'll rain, it heats up, and the rock melts into the ice. I've lived there for 10 years and worked that driveway. We still slide off it sometimes. I can only imagine what staff every single day, food trucks, vendors, everybody coming up and down that driveway, there are going to be accidents. That driveway would, as a bare minimum, have to be 2.5 times its current width. Because remember, when you push snow, it closes in, the driveway closes down as you get all the snow berms along the side. So I have driven that driveway multiple times, and it is not even remotely adequate for this facility. Okay, I heard Mr. Finkel talk today, and he said for the county, during one of the consideration is it must mitigate impacts. And one of them was economic impacts. And that got me thinking, well, what are the economic impacts? I'm a realtor, but so are a bunch of the people for it. The Zarings, the Spikers, the Doties. So I think that since we have a dog in the fight, if you would, it would be best for our opinion to maybe be set aside. So I created a survey, and I will give that to you here at the end. And I just described the facility, said it was in a rural community, and I handed this out to about 20 realtors, and I specifically put it on their desk so I wouldn't talk with them, or the ones that I saw, they asked me, what is this? I said, just read the survey. I do not want to give you any biasness. And the names are on all the surveys. Feel free to call them. And I said, so tell me a little bit about what do you think? And on the survey, it described the proposed facility and location. And then it asked the realtors to comment on the desirability of neighboring properties, percent of property value change, and whether or not if they had some buyers and they knew a home was for sale in that area, would they even want to see it? So here we go. I got back 15 of those 20 surveys. And these are real facts from experienced realtors who have no dog in this fight. Of the 15 realtors that submitted the survey back, all 15 said property values would decrease. I thought we couldn't economically impact if I went through a conditional use permit. The average percentage, because I asked them, give me a percentage of what you think property values would decrease. 21%. So that means all these Wolf Lodge residents that are behind me, you're taking 20% of their home equity away if you allow this property to happen. And this is from realtors that were unbiased. My house is valued at $1 million. If this facility goes through, the county allowed this facility to steal $200,000 away from me. And maybe in the future, when that house is worth $2 million, when I finally am ready to sell because I don't want stairs anymore, now that's $400,000 that doesn't get inherited by my kids. Imagine all these residents, all of those people will have some sort of economic impact if this facility is in Wolf Lodge. I didn't think that was allowed with a conditional use permit. But maybe a sob story about how bad it's needed versus should it be needed in Wolf Lodge? That's the real discussion. Trevor Stone, his family's lived there since 1964. You're going to take 21% away of his value of his land. I have some comments from some of the realtors. I just asked them to comment. I lived in an area where this activity took place, and it created issues in the area with vandalism and theft. I have somebody else. Safety is also a concern. Living in a rural area comes with a certain level of self-sufficiency. That means protecting yourself and your family from immediate danger, and most people do that by having guns. There are more than enough areas to place a facility, as you mentioned, without invading the quiet, peaceful nature of a rural community. Somebody else, people want to live in the country for peace and quiet and solitude. A facility like described would change the area completely. More noise, traffic, more impact on road conditions, water uses, garbage, wildfire risk, etc. And these are all comments from realtors that I did not solicit. I have every single survey in there that I was returned, so you will get to see those. Some people wanted me to talk about the traffic. I think it's been covered quite a bit, but East Side Highway District, I'm not going to badmouth them. They're out there and they try to do their best to plow it. They really do. But you get snow on a Friday night. Sometimes it doesn't get plowed till Monday. And then you get some rain. There's plenty. I had a neighbor tell me today, in 2 years they've seen 8 slide-offs on Alder Creek. So how many people do you think coming up into town, staff, counselors, there's going to be issues driving Alder Creek in the winter? Certainly they're not going to make it up the driveway. Alder Creek can look like a war zone sometimes with the number of potholes that we get on there. Increased traffic's only going to make it worse. There's children on the road, pets on the road. It's a rural community. And these are going to have people going up and down the road. They're not going to know what to expect. And I think you bring in some safety concerns as well. You know, my time is starting to run short, and I want to give myself actually time if you have questions for me. So I'm going to end a little early, but again, everybody for it, they talked about the need for these facilities, and they said if you're a Christian or if you have a heart, how could you oppose this? I'm a Christian. I have dealt with this mental health issues. So do I understand the need for people to seek mental health treatment? I do. But I don't think Wolf Lodge is the right place. And I'm not sure, as we're going to hear in a little bit, legally Kootenai County has to make sure that they mitigate all the economic impacts. How are you going to mitigate 21% property loss for all of Wolf Lodge residents if this gets approved? You know, and I want to finish with, you know, in our experience, the sheriff from Kootenai County talked about we received several calls for runaways, missing persons, drug, sex offenses, arson. I have girls that are on that driveway that are home alone a lot by themselves. So yes, I do have a little bit of an emotional reason to not want this facility there. But factually, I don't think it should be allowed either. Primarily due to the fact that it's going to just crush property values. And they can, I mean, they're going to scream blue in the face that it won't. But I just polled 20 realtors and they all said it would. So that is my time. And ma'am, do you have any questions for me?
No, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you. Oh, I would like to, these are the surveys and my notes for exhibit, please.
Entered into the record as Exhibit HE 1007.
Okay. I have Brandon Stone, who donated time. Casey Ryder donated time. Lorraine Burton donated time. Lance Jordan, I don't think you did. It's opposed and may wish to speak.
Hello. My name is Lance Jordan. I live out in the Wolf Lodge area at 12451 Riva Road. I've lived in the Wolf Lodge area for 19 years. I just truly don't think this is about the fact that, yes, we truly need more mental health help. We truly do. But this isn't about that. This meeting is about whether we should waive what the county has said are the rules for the property that it's on. And as far as that, I see no reason to make it fit out there. It's not a good fit. I know darn well there are times for having delivery trucks out there, fire, ambulance. They're not in a fire zone. I know darn well it takes the fire truck at least a half hour to get out to my house. And like the gentleman on Kempton Road, I live a whole lot closer to the freeway. There's going to be so much impact for everybody out there. And you need a facility like this to be where the infrastructure is set up to support it. And it's just not out there. Most of that road, once you turn onto Alder Creek from Wolf Lodge Creek Road, you get up about 1.5 miles, maybe 2, and it's gravel. Like they said, potholes. It's going to be beat to snot. It's just not a good way to go. And as far as the plowing in the winter, there's a lot of years that the county plows up to Forest Service Road 413, not up to 4th of July Pass. So they're not coming in from the other way. They can't. It's not plowed. It's just not a good fit. And I understand that we really need more help for the mentally, or for the people who need a little bit of help mentally. I get that. But like I said, this is not what this meeting's about. It's does it fit by the code of the county, and it does not. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Burns, I think you were on one of my lists.
Yeah, I was. I actually deferred my time, but I didn't understand he wasn't taking up all this time. Can I have like 2 minutes?
That's a judgment call on your part. I would be inclined to say he gave up his time, and that time's been used.
Yeah, I think Captain Andy Deek, opposed, may wish to speak.
You'll have to excuse me, I'm struggling with laryngitis as we meet tonight. My name is Captain Andy Deek. I'm the Operations Support Bureau Commander for the Sheriff's Office, and I represent Sheriff Robert Norris when I speak tonight. I'm going to read a letter into the record that I did submit to Community Development on October 14th. It says to Planner Vlad Finkel, Kootenai County Community Development, from Captain Andy Deek, dated October 14th. Agency comments, request for conditional use permit 22-008 Living Water Youth Ranch. On October 13th, 2022, I was alerted by concerned citizens of the Alder Creek area, lungs hurt, who inquired with the Sheriff's Office regarding the Sheriff's Office response to a proposed youth care facility being proposed in their neighborhood. I checked my responses to the community development and discovered we, KCSO, did not have a response related to this project. I telephoned you, Vlad, and informed you that CUP 22-2008 request for comment did not originally include the Sheriff's Office along with other public agencies on July 25th, 2022. I was surprised by this and expressed my concern for this, as the Sheriff's Office is the primary law enforcement agency responsible for responding to the proposed location. During our conversation, you told me that I could submit my response the following day. With that, our concerns with the request for CUP 22-008 Living Water Youth Ranch, or the residential care facility for at-risk youth, as it is described in the text body of the request for comment. The primary concern for the Sheriff's Office is the location of this proposed facility. It is currently zoned rural and is located at a significant distance from the city, in which typically means longer response times for emergency 911 calls made for law enforcement assistance. This concern is exacerbated in the winter months when weather conditions are unfavorable. In our experience with this type of facility proposed, there are several calls for response, including runaways, missing persons, psychological, suicide, drugs, sex offense, prowlers, battery, arson, injured animals, and fraud. These calls for service are just a sampling of law enforcement responses within the last year of the Kootenai County At-Risk Treatment Center. Additionally, our 911 center process calls for the following fire med responses, which they can elaborate as needed. These calls included fire alarms, trauma, allergic reactions, and cardiac arrest. The community that this facility is proposed is currently a very low call volume area for the Sheriff's Office law enforcement response, and is very typical of the rural designation. The proposed addition of the at-risk youth facility will
I'm
undoubtedly...
sorry, Captain, that was your 3-minute mark.
Okay. Can I submit this in for the record?
All right, someone has donated their minutes to you, so continue.
Okay. The proposed addition of the at-risk youth facility will undoubtedly change the dynamic for law enforcement, the community we serve, the neighboring residents, and the potential safety and care for the well-being of the patients and staff. Lastly, I received the actual definition of the residential care facility from the Kootenai County Land Use Code dated October 22nd, 2019. It clearly states a facility within 9 or more unrelated elderly persons. We've heard this description before, but in the spirit of the law, I feel that this is an exaggeration of it. The disabled is a term of definition that is variable. The need for facilities of youth who are struggling in life are needed for youth and parents alike. But we consider these things above. The Sheriff's Office cannot endorse this project. I do want to read through a couple statistics on a supplemental document that I'm entering into the record tonight. It's dated today, and these are just a few statistics from Intercept House, and I know they were mentioned by Ms. Scott. They do represent a large facility of beds as a conglomerate, but individual housing units are smaller in size, most of them ranging 9 or less. And I'll give an address, Intercept of 5033 East Dog Road in Hayden. In a 1-year period from 10/1 of 21 through 9/30 of 22, 36 calls, and I'm going to just highlight a couple. They were medical, fire alarms, trauma, allergic reaction, cardiac arrest, health and welfare intake sheets, runaways, missing. The remainder were psychological, fraud, sex offenses, and prowlers. The address at Intercept House 14790 Oriole Drive in Hayden. They had 21 calls for service, similar type situations. We've got Intercept at 6915 East Ohio Match Road. They had 6 calls for service in the 1-year period. And another home within the city of Hayden, Harmony House, which does house a criminal element there, rehabbing people. They had 47 calls for service. The Sheriff's Office is responsible for answering all these calls. The above 4 location calls for service, there are other related calls in the surrounding community related to theft. These were just at those specific homes. There's other collateral damage that happens, shoplifting, residential burglary, SWAT calls. We've had barricaded suspects and committed crimes in other residential locations that tied back to residents of these homes. Lastly, I just want to address a couple things that Ms. Scott said tonight that I feel like I have to respond to. The idea and the security measures in place are certainly commendable from their perspective and what they're looking at. We have a drone team at the Sheriff's Office. When you get into a forested area, a drone does nothing. There's a canopy you can't see through. I know it's an element that they've expressed, and I don't think it's going to work. I give them that response.
That was your second 3.
I'm almost done.
Who is the person who donated first, the first 3 minutes? Okay, and who's donating these 3 minutes? Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, some staffing numbers were mentioned. It's the first time I've heard it on the original proposal. They said 15 staff members. If they're staffing 6 to 8 on a day shift and 3 to 4 at night, that's 12 people on half the week. It's a 24/7 facility. You'd have to double or triple that staff in order to adequately maintain a 7-day, 24-hour period. Life flight was also mentioned. I don't know where they would put a landing zone in out there in that forested area. There's nothing close to their region. Camp Myvedin was also referenced as another treatment facility. They are not a treatment facility. Lastly, we've got, there's stories that can be referenced and probably pulled by people in this audience, and I'm not doing a disservice. I'm talking from a law enforcement perspective. We've had runaways in the middle of winter that have left some of these locations. They're treatment facilities, unsecured. They run. It doesn't take very long to get away, and once they're gone, we've had people leave in pajamas with T-shirts, 17 degrees out. One of them almost froze to death. Like I said, we've had SWAT call-outs. They're barricaded. Just this last week, we had somebody from the Ohio Match facility assault one of my sergeants who was walking down the road. She was about 130 pounds, and he's a 200-plus pound man, and she was angry. He was by himself. He took a licking. Stuff that yes, and they are there for a reason. They're at-risk youth, and as somebody in the audience already talked about it, they can be low risk and snap at once. They can be high risk and never have a problem. My concerns as a sheriff's officer, these are my concerns for you to consider. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Greg Schremp, opposed, may wish to speak.
Thank you for letting me speak. I have spent 40 years in the municipal water and sewer industry, and I have firsthand experience about public water systems. And earlier in the program, it was stated that Panhandle Health and another agency had stated that this facility will need a public water system. In my experience, I have noticed when these public water systems are installed, the pumping system is larger and the piping system is larger. And what that entails is a lot bigger draw from the aquifer. And there's quite a few wells out there. And if you refer to an article in the Coeur d'Alene Press on August 19th of 2022, it states that in the state of Idaho, we're experiencing a tremendous loss of our water table. It's happening down in Eagle in southern Idaho, and it's actually happening close to us in Cougar Gulch. There's a lot of folks out there that have their private wells, and like I say, I've seen these public wells. They draw down the water table, and if the neighbors' wells aren't deep enough, their wells go dry. And that's a very real possibility that could happen if this project goes through. Once again, as stated by the other folks, these facilities are needed, but I don't think Wolf Lodge is the area for this facility. Another item I'd like to address is Mark Mathis spoke earlier about the realtor point of view on these facilities. It was about 30 years ago, my wife and I were looking at property in the John Day area of Oregon. And I saw this great price on this beautiful piece of property. It was lower than anything that we've looked at, the best price I've seen in the area. We went to that property. It was beautiful. It was a meadow. There was pine trees, gorgeous. And right across the street was one of these facilities. And a few of the residents came out and gave us their opinion of what they thought about life, which greatly upset my wife. And we left. I told her, I know now why this property was so cheap, so inexpensive. And in the future, I would never buy a piece of property like that close to one of these facilities for that very reason. The property values just diminish. So I'm about done. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Neil Traub, opposed, may wish to speak. No? Okay. Selena McAllister, opposed, may wish to speak.
My name is Selena McAllister. I'm from 17891 Alder Creek Road. So as a true North Idaho native, living here my whole life and graduating from Coeur d'Alene High School in 2019, I was actually friends with, well, am still friends with lots of these people that would be considered troubled youth. And my sisters, being in the age range that it sounds like they would be helping kids, are still currently friends with and in high school with a lot of these kids. And with that being said, because I'm friends and because I see my sister's friends, I honestly feel like, although I do think that there's a huge need in the community for help, and I understand with Kootenai taking away their facility, that creates even bigger needs. I feel as though that because I was friends with them, I see that the issues that they were struggling with, and I see that they would not be someone that I want my family around. I'm actually expecting a child right now, and I would not want my kid growing up in an area that is potentially filled with people that could run away, that might just walk away. That's a huge issue for me that I know lots of us that have kids, even that don't have kids, are super worried about having issues run away. I know that's not potentially something that they see happening a lot, but even if it happens once and something super traumatic happens to one of our neighbors, that's still one too many times. Another issue that I don't think can be harped on enough is the traffic. A lot of us up there, I would say probably feel like we're pretty experienced winter drivers, especially with Alder Creek Road. The upper portion of it is beyond scary. Even in the summertime, honestly, there's times where even I, who've lived up there several years, don't even always feel comfortable driving on that road. In the wintertime, especially coming down from the top, which I would assume most people would be since that is the main pass entryway, it is scary. There's lots of cliffs that are icy, and I get we're in North Idaho, and that is an issue in all of North Idaho. However, going off cliffs on icy roads is scary, as several people talked about. We all love East County. East County's come out and helped us all several times when they didn't need to, or sooner than they should have or needed to. But we've had multiple times on the weekends where there's been over a foot of snow. And I drive a big lifted truck, and my truck was still having issues. And I know that not everyone that is going to be up at this facility would have big lifted trucks, and I see that being a huge issue, blocking roads. And I know that that's not end all be all, but that's definitely a serious issue that would need to be addressed on our road. Yeah, there's a lot of, our road's not well maintained, which is fine for us because we live out in the country, but might not be for the people going to that facility. Thank you.
Thank you. Seth Lukasik, opposed, may wish to speak.
My name is Seth Lukasik. I live at 17891 East Alder Creek Road as well with Selena McAllister. Excuse me. I'm opposed. I would like to say that I totally understand the need for this type of stuff. I actually, through my business, help underprivileged kids get into dirt bike riding and stay out of trouble. However, as Selena mentioned, we're expecting a child. I'm friends with most of my neighbors, and safety of my family and my neighbors is my main concern. Something that I think was kind of overlooked in the presentation earlier is, yes, we're out in the country, we're out in the mountains, whatever you want to call it, but almost, I would say 99% of Alder Creek Road is private properties. The only piece of Forest Service land that borders Alder Creek Road is a small, maybe 1/8 mile stretch that is right next to the property of the proposed project. But the rest of Alder Creek Road, up until about 1.5 miles past this property, is all privately owned. It's all private property. So, in in the event of a runaway, low risk or high risk, the only place they can run away to is the freeway, which is clearly cliffside, or a private property. Myself and most of my neighbors, we know, I mean, obviously we lock up our houses and vehicles, but we don't necessarily need to out there. You know, I have tools in wood, in sheds and garages. We have weapons, you know, firearms in our house. There is no, I'm not sure, maybe up on top of that property there's service with Verizon, but that, I find that hard to believe considering the entire road all the way down to Wolf Lodge. From 4th of July, there's no service with Verizon. I have a Verizon cell phone. I drive that road twice a day, every single day, 6 days a week. You know, whether it was for them, which, yeah, sure, they have satellite radios or whatever, or satellite phones. But in the case that one of my neighbors was broken into, my girlfriend with child is at home and they can't call me, they can't call 911. That's a big concern of mine. The other, again, I mean, I understand the need for this. You know, I was stabbed in the arm at 10 years old by a troubled teenager. And since then, and several other things that happened when I was younger, I've been all about helping kids myself. And that's why I do a program through my business to help kids with dirt bike riding and staying out of trouble and getting active. This is putting this right in smack dab middle of a neighborhood. And I understand that that's needed, but not in the middle of a neighborhood. It looks like I'm about to run out of time. The road use, as Selena mentioned, in the winter it's brutal, and in the summer it gets graded once a year. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Gertrude Bew, opposed, does not wish to speak. Jim Van Lo. Ooh.
Tim Van Loheiser.
Say that again?
Van Loheiser.
Thank you. Opposed. It doesn't say whether you want to speak or not.
I'd like to.
Okay.
Tim Van Lohheisen, 12798 East River Road, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, 83814. I understand the need for the facility, but I think part of the problem that we're missing is we're in a rural neighborhood with rural services. And Eastside, we happened to have a Grange meeting, and Eastside Valley basically told us they don't have the money to pave our road or even chip seal it. They've been waiting 7 years to build and change Yellowstone Road. So they're talking about improvements on Alder Creek, which at best is a 1.5 lane gravel road, that I don't see where they're going to be able to come up with the funding without us paying as taxpayers. So I do think there's going to be some mitigation issues that we're going to have to pay for this facility. It's also the only facility that would be commercial use. You know, we have a 1,000-acre ranch, we have people with lots of property, we have national forest, but it is just that, it's all private property. And so this is now a commercial use. The other thing that nobody's talked about is we don't even have waste services. We use the dumpsters at the beginning of the road. So, and then the other part is, you look out here, this is our community. I bet your turnout's probably 90%. So it's not that a few of us are opposed, most of us are opposed. And it's not because of what happened, but myself, I literally knew about 10 days ago this was happening. At the beginning of our road, which is, we call it the frontage road, there's a sign that's basically 8x10 stapled to the stop sign. And that was the only notice we got until some neighbors said, hey, did you hear about? So one is, I don't think we got fair representation, because by the time the meeting was ready, it was already closed. And then the second part of that is, and I understand they want to be good neighbors, but we haven't heard from them. I like what they said, I understand what they said, but I don't think it's the place to put it. That's my comments.
Thank you. Thomas Holohan, opposed, doesn't say whether you want to speak or not. Okay. Lisa Ellsberg, opposed, does not wish to speak. Margaret Ellsberg, opposed, does not wish to speak. Peyton Ost, opposed, does not wish to speak. Michael Ost, opposed, does not wish to speak. Blake Ost, opposed, does not wish to speak. Owen Ost, opposed, does not wish to speak. Madeline Ost, I assume, opposed, does not wish to speak. Jude Ost, opposed, does not wish to speak. Jonathan Ost, opposed, does not wish to speak. Dirks Ost, opposed, does not wish to speak. Andy Ost, opposed, does not wish to speak. Christine Traub, opposed, does not wish to speak. Jake Schremp, opposed. Doesn't say if you want to speak or not. Aaron L. Burned. It says you donated your time and were opposed. Rebecca Stattle, it says you're opposed and you donated time. Roger Schult, opposed, donated time. Carrie Rome, opposed, donated time. Michelle Stone, opposed. Doesn't say whether you want to speak or not. Paul and Mary Hander, opposed, says donated time. Leonard Ellsburn, opposed, does not wish to speak. Loretta Sutherland, opposed, does not wish to speak. Jacob Ellsburn, opposed, does not wish to speak. Jim Paulson, opposed, does not wish to speak. Rhonda Paulson, opposed, does not wish to speak. Judith Robbins, opposed, does not wish to speak. Patricia Dunn, opposed, does not wish to speak. Yes.
Entered into the record as Exhibit HE.
1008. Thank you. Thomas Burns, opposed, does not wish to speak. Emily Moyer, opposed, does not wish to speak. Michael Burns, opposed, does not wish to speak. Liam Burns, opposed, does not wish to speak. Carmen Jasper, opposed, does not wish to speak. Bettina Whipple, opposed, does not wish to speak. Carrie Mathis, I think you were on my list. Samuel Mathis, yeah. Mimi Murphy, opposed, does not wish to speak. Tom Pace, opposed, does not wish to speak. Patricia Leader, opposed, does not wish to speak. Wendy Leader, opposed, does not wish to speak. Tim Leader, opposed, does not wish to speak. Stephanie Rose, I think you're on my list. Mark Moyer, I think you were on a list too, weren't you? Yeah. Nick Beckett, opposed, does not wish to speak. Okay, that's all the sheets. There's more. Dennis Dunn. I don't think I've called your name before. Opposed, and doesn't say whether you wish to speak or not. Josh Ellsburn, opposed, and you wish to speak.
Good evening and thank you. My name is Josh Ellsburn. I live at 14389 East Alder Creek Road, about a mile, maybe 2 miles from the facility. Like most of these people, I live in Alder Creek. As you saw when you raised your hands, a lot of adult taxpayers here. So unlike what was said over here, clearly there are a lot of adults who are opposed to this. Some of our children did write letters. Some of our parents wrote letters. I don't think it's a problem that tax-paying children can write a letter to oppose this. So I've been a plumber for 16 years. I'm licensed as a journeyman and a contractor in the state of Idaho. I have a lot of experience engineering plumbing systems, including septic and fire systems. The problem with the Wolf Lodge's soil makeup, as the other gentleman talked about with public sewers, is that we just have such extensive clay on the valley walls, and we have a very high water table during certain times because of the surface water with the creeks. There is a Class 2 stream running right in the middle of the property. When you look at the diagrams of where they want to put the facility, it's actually quite close. So the challenge there is either if they're in the clay, Panhandle Health requires 380 feet of leach chambers for a 4-bedroom house, which would expect to hold 9 people. So when you have, say, 30 people every day using facilities, I don't know what that math would work out to. They'd probably have to go to a mechanical system, and at that point, realistically, they have no place to dispose of it unless they use an incinerator, which is a viable option. But if they do use an incinerator, it inevitably produces ash and odor, which again affects the neighborhood in ways that they can't mitigate. We have a lot of concerns concerning the numerous contradictions we've seen published in prior emails and the slideshow, which was available before this hearing. It was on the website. We were told in the emails first there'd be at-risk youth at risk of suicide, drug addiction, and mental health problems during a full lockdown. Then as we see the emails, it changes. We're told there will be no drug addicts. But then when you asked the director what is the demand of the services, she cites the opioid crisis, which means heroin addicts. So are there going to be drug addicts or not? Because that's the basis for the demand here. We also have another significant concern about the runaways, less about being shot, but we have a lot of bears, we have a lot of dogs, we have a lot of mountain lions, we have a lot of wolves. They eat our livestock. Our dogs are on our property to protect our livestock. A lot of the people have the same. They won't distinguish between a person, a mountain lion, a raccoon. Those kids are going to be vulnerable to that, and that needs to be dealt with. Our biggest concern, I think, is just the fact that it's going to be an unsecure facility. If the doors are wide open, there's nothing to stop people from escaping. And I think if they want to put this anywhere, they need to address that, because clearly runaways are a concern. So I do just want to end by saying, God bless all of our children, and it does seem like, hearing from the testimonies, that the schools are the common denominator here, and I would like people to evaluate that and think about that and then reconsider what options they have as alternatives to hopefully avoid those problems. Thank you.
Thanks. Brian Terrell, opposed, wishes to speak.
Thank you, Madam Board Examiner. Brian Terrell, 12723 East Alder Creek Road. The residents of Wolf Lodge Creek are not opposed to the type of services that the applicants and the proponents propose in this scenario. What they oppose to is the location. I want to bring it back to the matter at hand. The matter at hand is not need. The matter before this board today is specifically, is the location and siting and conditional use for this particular project suitable for and compatible with the location? I go back to rural zone. It states zoning when the land has been found to be suitable for rural residential uses and uses related to agriculture pursuits, including farming and forestry, which this is neither. And in the code sections, it's, the staff, which they've done a really good job trying to be flexible with this particular project, is the project consistent with land use designation in the comprehensive plan, which applies to the subject property. And right now, the comprehensive plan calls for resource recreation. Well, activities that promote existing land use for cultivation or extraction of agriculture or timber or production and surface mining or dude ranches or lodges, which this is neither. This project does not conform to the zoning or resource recreation designations provided by Kootenai County. The other thing is the project generally compatible with the present and reasonably expected future land uses within the vicinity of the subject property? The fact is, there are no ongoing commercial operations on East Alder Creek Road. This would be the very first. Other than those dedicated to rural resource recreation. The designation of agriculture, forestry, and mining. The remote location of the Wolf Lodge Creek area is prohibitive of any other commercial operations, and that is really what's at hand here. This is a commercial operation.
especially those requiring potential dedicated emergency rescue services from CDA-based facilities? And lastly, will the project have a materially adverse effect on the value, the character, or use or enjoyment of neighboring properties? Mark Mathis today just stated potentially that could have a 20% or 21% reduction in property values. There's numerous national studies that illustrate the reduction of property values where at-risk use facilities are cited. The surrounding properties in national forest are the subject of a tremendous amount of in-season hunting. We know this because we live here. And there's a tremendous amount of predator depredation, coyote, mountain lion. Does anyone want to yield? Great, thank you.
Who is that?
The Idaho Stand Your Ground provisions on neighboring property owners significantly increases the risks in this area. Not everybody has the same concerns about stand your ground, but the fact is it still remains. Some are a little more vigorous than others. But I have concerns for the potential children and youth in this facility because of that. An unknown person coming onto a property, the property owner doesn't have to know their intent. The property owner doesn't have to know what they're intending to do or what their means are. They just have to know that their life could be in danger. That's a potential risk I don't think we should be taking. The siting of this facility in the Wolf Lodge Creek area would unduly burden property owners with an increased vigilance necessary to live next to close proximity to such a high-risk youth capable of harming others. And then specifically, I'd like to add into exhibit, I looked at the proposal from the Kootenai County Fire, and the requirements for this facility are staggering. To have a commercial facility located and sited in the Wolf Lodge Creek area, utilizing the National Fire Protection Association Code as cited by Kootenai County Fire, NFPA 1142, this project would require 206,000 gallons of on-site storage with fire hydrant capacity and 6-inch preferred 8-inch fire mains. These are staggering facilities. I have a lot of experience in this arena. That's a lot of money and that's a lot of capacity. And that doesn't even take into account the other unmitigated cost of adhering to NFPA 1403. That is another component that this project would have to adhere to, which requires an additional 50% reserves, which brings the total on site. They'd have to have a 309,000 gallon capacity to be able to provide 5.15 hours at 1,000 gallons an hour of fire rated service for fire trucks that would come on site. We don't have anything like that. We don't even have the capacity for that kind of water. This would unduly impact the residents of this area. And I think citing something like this in this area is going to, well, it's certainly galvanized the people of Wolf Lodge Creek. I can certainly tell you that. We are not unamenable to the uses for this, the community in large, and the need for this. The question is whether the site is suitable for such a use, Madam Board Examiner. And the fact is, from a structural, from a logistics, from a social aspect, based on staff even recommending the recommendations, this facility is not suitable for this location. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
I'd like to add this into exhibit, please.
Oh.
Entered into the record as Exhibit HE 1009.
Joseph Whipple, opposed, wishes to speak?
Madam Hearing Examiner, I'm Joseph Whipple, 30-year property owner, 16781 East Alder Creek Road, Coeur d'Alene. These opinions are offered with respect to all. The CUP proposal offers to help young people struggling with mental and emotional issues to receive treatment within a compound comprised of several support buildings totaling approximately 18,000 square feet. We do not oppose individuals in such cases to receive treatment, as that would be heartless. We do oppose the proposal in our residential neighborhood. We oppose the potentialities regarding our safety, the impacts it would have on our well-established peaceful lifestyles, the traffic increase of 50%. We oppose the decrease in our property values, the stresses imposed upon our neighborhood already, the long-distance draw upon emergency service from populated areas, and the real danger of a summer forest fire, etc. As posted, the proposal is called a residential care facility for at-risk youth. The suffix for at-risk youth is not part of the 2019 Land Use and Development Code, and applicants have no authority to modify it to achieve their desires. While it is rare, residential care facilities can accommodate from age 18 up as an occupant, generally in recovery from problems that would inhibit physical activities. See definition of residential care facility in the code definition. It refers to elderly, not youth, or those persons with a disability. Typing in a Google search, disability definition yields Oxford Languages, quote, a physical or mental condition that limits a person's movements, senses, or activities. Because the patients are elderly, if applicants claim that the patients fall into the disabled portion of the code definition, then how could they offer at-risk youth to participate in activities requiring physical movements such as blindfolded maze, hiking, snowshoeing, fishing, volleyball, horseshoes, archery, ropes course, and whitewater rafting? This is essentially the entire reason for this compound's location. Whatever the case, don't fall for a buy-in through the apparent use of equivocation. Applicants claim their patients will be thoroughly screened and only the best will be admitted. But then why would they need help anyway then? Could it be money? Since this was suddenly sprung on us, the neighbors now have serious concerns about the potential of commercial development expansion due to the one property owner to the east being in favor of the project. In my email dated 10 October, I addressed the 2020 comp plan conflictions. Due to the fact community development has already recommended the CUP be denied, applicants might seek legal recourse against the county. Bear in mind, the applicants knew or should have known months ago the application request definition did not meet the proposal actual classification. Therefore, we ask you to confidently recommend this be denied and the BOCC to vote unanimously likewise. Thank you.
Thank you. Jessica Ost, opposed, wishes to speak.
My name is Jessica Ost, and my address is 17241 East Alder Creek Road. I want to start with, they said earlier they had met all the neighbors and let everybody know. My property also adjoins this property, and that was left out on the presentation. I have not met anyone here and had no idea until I saw that little sign sitting out front letting everybody know that this was moving in. So my main concerns, I'm a wife and a mother. I'm here with my kids. I have 9 kids here, and I am most worried for safety. So that's my big concern. I do feel like most of that's been addressed tonight by Captain Deek, who obviously let us know what the risks are here, and Mr. Jasper, who let us know what the response times are, as we are quite a bit further up the road than Mr. Jasper. And I'll just submit the notes that I had. A little bit of it's repetitive, but I would like to submit it.
Entered in the record as Exhibit HE 1010.
Marie?
My name is Marie Ellsberg. I'm from 14389 East Alder Creek Road. I have concerns for Living Water Youth Ranch. Originally, I came here to talk about the environmental impact of this massive facility that's going to be built on the Class 2 stream. But I'd like to point out the claims are very distressing, such as right there, the building department planning approve it, which has not happened. And anyway, going back to my environmental concerns is the wells may be contaminated and the quantity of water available to the existing users will be diminished, considering the size of the main structures and various buildings that are being proposed. Highly valued streams or water will be degraded by watershed development. The presence of such massive structure will significantly alter the contribution to the stream, affecting the water supply and aquatic habitat. And according to the land resource specialist, Mr. Andrew Larson, has classified, like I said, the main stream at Class 2, which means they have fish in them and are entitled to specific protections. And this development can cause degradation of the immediate stream area, such as physical destruction to the aquatic habitat, production of sediment pollution during the construction phase, and increased runoff volume, which accelerates the erosion and exacerbates flooding. Risk of flooding is already present every season along the waterways to our neighborhood. A decreased amount of the precipitation soaking into the soil and recharging the groundwater system, that will affect the well because the water temperature will be elevated, and due to the removal of streamside shading vegetation, heated runoffs from sunbaked impervious surfaces, and the heating of runoff while it drains out of stormwater plants during the summer, and increasing the quantity of nutrients, toxics, and other pollutants released into the aquatic environment, water, especially in a Class 2 stream, poses a tangible risk to house downstream, risks that are not currently present and not possible to discern. In addition to this ecosystem impacts, watershed development can damage structures located along streams and other waterways through flooding. The increased flooding associated with watershed development also accelerates the pace of stream channel erosion. In fact, converting a forest watershed to suburban or urban uses can cause the channel draining the watershed to widen by 2 to 8-fold through erosion. And I've cited an article that supports this. And accelerated channel erosion results in habitat destruction, and the release of sediment in downstream waters may jeopardize streamside structure. And yeah, I think, that's it. I just wanted to point that out because it's clearly not addressed. And if we look at the map, the stream cuts across all the proposed buildings, and I think it's important that, it's going to affect everyone with the water. And that's all. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Joe Rose, opposed, may wish to speak.
Hi, my name is Joel Rose. I live at 17421 Alder Creek Road. And first of all, I'd like to say that I never met anyone here to tell me that they were going to build anything. We have a 120-acre horse ranch right across the street and maybe a quarter mile. And we are definitely opposed. My wife and I oppose the facility from being built on Alder Creek Road based on several reasons I'd like to outline. One, they're referring to this as a residential care facility. There's a lot of verbiage around what kind of facility this is, but to us, the people that live here, it's a correctional facility. It outlines in this thing that they're going to have it fenced, and it makes us all nervous. We live in a quiet residential area, and it's all residential. We like our privacy, and we like to keep it that way. The building, they had it down projected as 21,000 square feet. Now it's 14,000 square feet. And it's to me, it's just a stepping stone for expansion. There's a property next door that sold them this property that is still approves it because in my mind and a lot of other neighborhood mind, they want to expand it and make this a bigger outfit down the road. So in my mind and a lot of neighbors, we think this is just a footstone to get going, and we don't want that there. And also, the community doesn't feel safe for this institution, and I'm going to refer to it as an institution because that's what it is. They can't guarantee the safety that anybody's going to walk away and do anything to my property or my person. When I come home at night and I unlock my gate, it's dark out there, no one's going to stop anything from happening except me. And I don't know what these people are capable of. Like the other person said, that they start out as low risk, anything can happen, they snap, their drugs, whatever's going on. I don't know the people that are associated with them, and we don't want it. We don't need it, they can put it somewhere else. There's a need, that's fine, put it in town, put it in wherever, but not there. It doesn't make sense. And that's all I have to say about it.
Jennifer Booth, opposed, may wish to speak. Okay, thank you. Kay Bledsoe, I think you were one of my donators, yes. Christopher Jasper, opposed, wishes to speak.
My name is Christopher Jasper. I live at 3665 South Varnum Road, attached to Alder Creek Road in Wolf Lodge. I'd like to address some of the points they made in the presentation. As we've heard from many people, they claim that they contacted the residents of the community. I don't know of any of the residents in our community that knew about this prior to that sign being posted a couple weeks ago, except for maybe Mark Mathis and those directly involved. They say, if not here, where? We're not opposed to the work they do. We care about the youth. It's the location. If not here, then where? That's not our job or the community's job or the county's job to find a location. That's their job. They talk about the more severe ice roads in Harrison, Sagal, Kellogg, that our roads are fine. Well, they're not. Just 2 years ago, I was inches away from dying, sliding off our road, a very similar hill to theirs, and slid off the road and slammed into a tree, crushing my cab, literally inches away from dying. And that's typical road conditions. They want to align themselves with descriptions such as recreation. Triple play is recreation. The Wolf Lodge zip line is recreation. Recreation is you pay to go to an event and you're free to leave anytime you want. You're not constrained to remain there under supervision. They believe will be an asset to the community. Again, we're not opposed to the persons or to the work they do, it's the location. I don't know of any of the residents, except for maybe the realtors who are getting paid, I don't know of any of the residents of Wolf Lodge community who believe this will be an asset to our community. If the kids run away, they will be trying to get back to friends. Again, not that easy. Do recreational staff at the zip line worry about potential runaways? Do they use all these safety precautions, warning them that they're going to get caught? Do they understand the liability of what happens if any of these children do get harmed on this property? They give a whole list of safety and security protocol. If these are low risk and no threat, then why such a vast list of security protocol? We don't need an at-risk facility in our community, turning our beautiful community into an at-risk community. They also said that more than half of the objections came from people from other cities. In actual fact, if you tally up the record, 61% of the respondents of the objections came from the Wolf Lodge community, and there would be far more had we had more advance notice and knew that this was happening and had time to respond. That's all my time.
Thank you. William Jasper, opposed, may wish to speak.
I already spoke.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to enter my statement into the record.
You have an exhibit you'd like to provide?
Entered into the record as Exhibit HE 2011.
1,000.
1011.
I'm still awake. I think it was Patricia Terrell who donated time? I did donate. Yes, thank you.
Allowed to submit also?
You have something for the, okay. And John Sutherland opposed and wishes to speak.
Entered into the record as Exhibit HE 1012.
I just want to read a letter that I submitted. My name's John Sutherland. I live at
17899 East Alder Creek Road. I was also one of the 1,700 block people that was not notified of this facility at all. I've never met any of these folks. Dear Sir or Madam, thank you for the opportunity to comment on the above referenced conditional use permit. My wife and I do not support the request. The primary reason for our opposition is the safety and security of area residents. This includes the lack of timely response from police and fire. We are also concerned with the potential for increased traffic on Alder Creek Road. As originally proposed, the applicants determined it was necessary to have the residents locked in their housing units. They did not have free reign of the facility or the property. As such, a Kootenai County Building Department official determined that the facility met the criteria in the building code to be classified as Group I3, which includes correctional centers, detention centers, jails, reformatories, etc. Not wanting this type of classification, the applicant submitted an addendum to the facility portion of the CUP narrative September 20th, 2022. In this addendum, all entrances and exits to the facility will be unlocked but alarmed, allowing residents to get outside in the event of an emergency. What this means to us is that the applicants did away with locks and submitted alarms and monitoring as a means of security. My wife and I feel that this lack of locks actually results in a reduction in safety and security for area residents. This is due in part to the frequent and sometimes prolonged power outages we experience in the area, which may have a negative impact on the alarms and monitoring devices. Locks prevent someone from inappropriately exiting the facility, while alarms and other monitoring devices at best merely document it, a result of which could very well be a troubled youth in someone's home. A related concern is the poor cellular coverage in the Alder Creek area. In our own case, we found it necessary to install a cell phone booster in our home. Even with this booster, our signal is intermittent at best in our home. Outside the house, we have no cell phone signal at all. This could exacerbate a problem in several ways, such as failing to receive notification regarding an escaped resident, to a lack of timely notification to police or fire in case of an emergency situation. This could increase the already extended response time due to our remote location. Finally, Alder Creek Road has seen an increase in traffic in recent years. This road is extremely dusty and washboarded in many areas. Oops. In closing, we feel the facility is inappropriate to place in a rural residential area with limited services. It poses a serious risk to the safety and security of residents and should be located in a more appropriate area.
All right.
Entered into the record as Exhibit HE 1013.
That is all of our comment sheets, but now we have to go to Zoom.
At this time, there are 4 people on Zoom that may wish to speak. I'll just read them off in order as they are listed on Zoom. Amy, you are listed first. Do you have anything you want to say? If so, just unmute yourself and go ahead.
No, we don't.
Okay, thank you. Jamie, you're listed next.
No, we do not.
Thank you. Steve Cox, do you have anything to say?
Thank you. I do not. I do want to add that I am one of the neighbors. I border the property as well, and I was never contacted by anyone and highly opposed this.
Thank you. That concludes the possible participants on Zoom.
Thank you. Applicant rebuttal.
Would it be possible to take a 5-minute recess to talk with my team?
Sure. I think a bathroom break is in order as well.
Very good.
Okay, we'll restart at 9:15. That works for everyone. Let's everybody sit down and get ready for applicant rebuttal. So against my nature. Okay, we're back on the record for CUP 22-0008, applicant rebuttal.
No, go ahead. Yeah, we're gonna have a team of us. Go ahead. Come on up.
So I guess my name, again, for the record, is Marcus Anderson. Do I need to restate address and all that?
No.
Okay. So I guess, first of all, we want, from my perspective, we wanted to issue an apology to the community of Wolf Lodge. We felt like we had talked to the neighbors around the area. The response had been receptive. We could have done a better job of talking with them specifically and explaining to them what we're trying to do. The encouraging thing to me is that everybody is in agreement that we need to find a way to help the kids. Where we're in disagreement is the location. We did the best we could with the data we had and the choices that we had. If we got that wrong, we apologize. We're simple North Idaho folk. I just missed a big bull elk on Monday.
Please address your comments here. Thanks.
It's still in my head from that. So I'm a little unprepared, but we love this country. I love North Idaho. It's the only place I ever want to live. And I want to do everything I can to help the kids in North Idaho. I was fortunate enough to be able to sell a company and have some money to be able to help out. And I'm trying to use that money to help out. We're not trying to make any money. This isn't an Ozark scam. For those of you that have watched Ozark, we're not trying to do anything shady. I have a foundation that's above board. Anybody can audit my books anytime. I have nothing to hide. We're trying to help kids. That's all we're doing. And if we've made a poor choice in the decision and the location, that's on us. But gosh darn it, we did the best we could with the data we have. And I apologize sincerely to the community of Wolf Lodge, because the last thing we wanted to do was ruffle as many feathers as we did. Mark Mathis stated that he was in the Air Force. My dad was a Marine, fought in Vietnam. I joked that I tell everybody I've been in the Marines for 42 years because my dad lived that long. And we're just trying to help people. We really are. We're not trying to pull a fast one. We're not used car salesmen. I've never sold a lot of things. I was just lucky with my brain. And we're just trying to help kids. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. I just want to say that, it seems like we're going to run into opposition no matter where we go. And the reason that we're requesting this conditional use permit is because we need a location like this. We are willing to abide by all agency regulations and do whatever it takes to enhance the safety to the best of our ability and address every one of these neighbors' concerns, if we can, to the best of our ability. There were several things that were mentioned. Somebody had mentioned the disability aspect and how could they participate in these things. You're only taking a portion of the definition of a disability. There are many things, mental health disorders, falling under ADA, the American with Disabilities Act guidelines. So it's not just physical disabilities. There are mental health classifications that fall under that as well. Somebody had mentioned the opioid epidemic and equated it to heroin. My heart in sharing with you what I did was, yes, there's a crisis out there. Let's do something before it becomes an issue for these individuals. We are not planning on taking those individuals into this facility. People had referenced food trucks, vendors, delivery drivers, roads. We have an office in town where we're going to be doing a lot of the transfers and pickups of things. We're not going to have commercial vehicles driving up and down the roads. Somebody had referenced being right next to the National Forest for hunting. We're probably 350, 500 yards or better where we're choosing to build. We're not the 150 yards that was referenced. That's not accurate. We just want to do our best. That's our goal, is to do our best to meet the needs of the community and also our facility. And we're trying our best to do a juggling act where we can make it like a win-win for everybody. That's what our heart desires, is to have a win-win for everybody. I'd like to try to work this out to the best of our ability with the community. Do you have a couple things?
I'm just trying to, reference some comments that were made. I mean, I would be very interested to see the survey that Mark Mathis did on, I mean, you can get the results on, how you ask questions. What was the detail that really went into this? I mean, 70, I don't want to give anybody a seizure. Oh, sorry. I mean, a facility like this, I mean, we're trying to embrace the privacy and lifestyle that everybody in Wolf Lodge so much cherishes. It would be interesting to see how the questions were posed, that we're building a private facility, addressing all the issues that we did, with security and all these things, but in the middle of 73 acres that you can't see into. I mean, the one main neighbor to the west, or to the east, I'm sorry, the Spikers, are absolutely on board with this. You have a letter saying as much. Quite a few residents mentioned that they weren't contacted. I didn't refer to contacting all the residents out there. It was the immediate property owners, Trevor Stone, the Spikers, and Mark Mathis. We had detailed discussions about what we were going to do and their opinion, and rightfully so. I mean, everybody has concerns. We want to address those concerns. But we did have detailed conversations with the immediate neighbors. There were a couple that were down a pretty steep embankment, at the edge of Alder Creek, and on the other side of Alder Creek, the Whipples and I think the Cox, that we did not approach. Everybody else, I personally had a face-to-face conversation with. So, I mean, the survey and property values dropping, again, how was that survey posed? Because when you talk about a private facility that's trying to embrace the surroundings of what's already there, that you can't see, you're rarely going to hear. I mean, I just don't feel, after 23 years in real estate locally with a background in construction, that this is going to decimate property values by 21%. I just think that's false. The adjacent property owners that are right there, that are directly affected, I mean, Mark Mathis, has more of an argument to make. The Spikers have more of an argument to make. But the Spikers, being the main part of our property line on the east side, are absolutely for this. And they own 80 acres. If they were so worried about property values, Jill Spiker's a real estate agent. Dave Spiker's a developer. They understand. We had even conversations about that, and they had zero concern with it. As far as the roads, I mean, Alder Creek and East Side, I live in Harrison. East Side also handles roads in my neck of the woods. I hear, 1.5 lanes. It's not 1.5 lanes. 2 cars can pass all the way up that road. It is county maintained. East Side Highway District, yeah, they can do a better job at times, but they have limited funding. They do what they can. I totally respect the work that they do. We had one gentleman talk about, his experience with summer camps, and, kids just walking off, and, I mean, lack of supervision. You can't compare a summer camp to the, what my sister's proposing. I mean, kids get to walk around all over summer camp. I mean, you're not going to keep track of them. So, I mean, you got to compare apples to apples here. Captain Deeks talked, or let's say, I think someone talked about Life Flight and having to have, was Captain Deeks. Life Flight and not having we have plenty of open space out on this property. We could easily do a landing pad at not much cost and have a designated area for Life Flight to come in. Response times, it got exaggerated. I mean, I keep hearing 35 to 40 minutes. That's entirely untrue. I'm just as far away in Harrison, live up over Burma Road, way out at the end of Diamond Road. When I leave my house to get to my office at Windermere on Northwest Boulevard, I'm 25 minutes in good weather. I might add 5 to 10 minutes to that, depending on the road conditions. I take that drive all the time. As far as driveway maintenance, it's my understanding that Mark Mathis, living at the very top of the hill, he traverses even steeper sections and is 2.5 times further up the road than where we are. And it came to my attention that his plowing equipment is a four-wheeler. I mean, so how well are you really maintaining your road? I mean, we're going to take it to a professional level and have, commercial level equipment to plow this road. So, I mean, I believe that we're going to have a much, much easier time than Mark Mathis paints the picture. And a lot of people are worried about the hunting access. I mean, this property, because it hasn't been developed, a lot of people get to cross this property. No one's out there. There's not really good access to that U.S. Forest Service. I mean, I hear people make comments about, we're going to be 150 yards off the property line. Well, if you're practicing good safety with your firearms, you've taken your hunting, safety courses, and you're an experienced hunter, you're going to know not to friggin' shoot to the east and toward other property owners. You're going to realize where you are in your direction. You do have Verizon and AT&T service up there. I mean, it's been proven. We have maps that prove it. The one gentleman that's talked about going up and down Alder Creek sits down much lower than the property that we're, proposing this development. We get up on a big plateau and have plenty of open area. We have pretty good cell service on this property. That's pretty much, I guess the rebuttal that I wanted to throw out, at least some of the things that I felt were a little bit off base. And again, I echo, what we have all talked about. Everybody here has valid concerns about wanting to protect their family and their kids and run away. I just don't see that kids are, if they try to run, they're going to hit the road and try to walk out there. They're not going to go try to burn somebody's house down or rape some, woman or cause some big issue. I mean, I just don't see, there seems to be a lot more concern than is warranted, in my opinion, with this. I mean, I live out in the country myself. I'm surrounded by, my neighbor. I mean, we want to embrace the lifestyle that's out there. We're not coming in to change it. It's the reason we're paying a premium price for this property and trying to bite off 73 acres that's very private where, we're off on our own. We want to maintain that exact thing for our neighbors. We are always going to be accessible. I mean, they want to reach out and talk to the facility, talk to the owners, talk to the board of directors. I mean, our intention, we live it. I've been here for almost 30 years, in real estate for 23. We're not coming in there to try and change it. I mean, when you hear institution and all these things, I think there's been a lot of back and forth with neighbors where this has just been raised to such a high degree that they think there's all these little criminals that are going to be running around up there. It's just simply not the case. So, hopefully we get an opportunity to address, further concerns. I mean, I tip my hat to how well prepared the opposition was. I hope they learned something from our presentation. We definitely learned a lot from their presentation, and we hope we have the opportunity to put their mind more at ease that we're really coming in to fit in and embrace the lifestyle that they cherish.
I would like to just say that we had a meeting with Ben Tarbutton and Vlad. It was Chris, Jeff, and myself just a few days ago. And Chris held up the letter from Kootenai County Sheriff and said, so this is the biggest issue in swaying. And the answer was yes. So the decision was not made prior. They indicated that that letter in that meeting with all of us had heavy weight to their decision. So I would like to request that if you're inclined to deny this project, could you remand it back, please, to the community development so we have a chance to address all of their very valid concerns. We want an opportunity to address those. And I would like to have access to those letters and different things that got turned in that we didn't get to see so we can adequately address those concerns.
And if possible, I don't know what you're allowed to disclose in a hearing like this, but I mean, I would like to see the surveys and how that was actually posed with this 21% property value decrease. Because I guarantee I could put this in front of just as many agents that are very experienced, and the way, if they sat through this meeting and they knew what was going in on 73 acres, private, you can't see into it, does that negatively affect 21%? I don't think so.
So, David, at this point, if they feel the need to, they say remand, but restudy what's been put in front of them, what's the best process? Is this a?
I actually suggested that alternative in an email conversation I had with Jennifer today, where I understood the situation. There's a he said, she said about the sheriff's staff. I'll let that go. I think the proper course here, since you've had a request for a remand, is it's your call, but you can send it back to the staff and we can dialogue until everyone feels comfortable. And at that point, we would reschedule a new public hearing with a full public notice. And you have the opportunity as the hearing examiner to limit any new discussion to singular items.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And we would like an opportunity to engage the community further. And we missed the opportunity to meet with all of the neighbors. We recognize that we only touched the few that were right on our property, and we were unaware of one. Heidi had one thing to add.
Well, what I was going to say is I heard someone in the crowd saying that if you didn't want it here, why don't you try living next to the facility? Actually, the intentions are for
to live
on the facility.
Mm-hmm.
So that is part of the plan. So
yeah, that's where the residential piece comes in. We want to be on site. Yeah. We will have counseling and staff offices on site where the staff gets to stay on the property, but we want to have a residence there as well. So we will live there.
One of my concerns that I think was somewhat expressed by Captain Deeks is that your employee count relative to the time of day and requirements for security and monitoring, because somebody's got to be watching cameras if you're using that method, that they may need a little work. But more than that, it's during the time of the year when people have trouble driving on our roads. And I hear this from nonprofits in town that their staff, they don't necessarily have the best vehicles or the best tires. And what happens in the winter when you've got a staff shift change and people can't get there? So are your current employees going to stay on site? And how many of them? And how are you providing for that? It just seems that there's a piece of information and management that would help in knowing, because the last thing you want to do is have a facility like this where you don't really, you can't have because of situations beyond your control. I mean, I already have enough concern that you won't be truly able to find the staffing, the qualified staff to drive this far in a time when we're it's very hard for people to find employees.
It's actually interesting because we've had people, Samantha's one of those people, telling people consistently, and there is a steady stream of people reaching out to me, professionals included, LCPCs like I am, saying, I want to be involved in this. I think you would be surprised at the amount of people who really do want to and are capable of. I have colleagues who have asked that don't even work at my agency saying, I would love to run some girls groups. I want to be involved.
But isn't this one of the reasons that Kootenai Health has discontinued their facility, is they have trouble finding staff?
Mm-hmm. And I talked to Johnny Monnier, who is one of the directors down there at the substance use disorders clinic, and he said that it was. People were overburdened. They were burned out, so they did have staffing issues in part, but a lot of it boiled down to money. And actually, there were some political reasons behind that, too. Like, for example, you can make more money on an elective surgery than you can in mental health.
So we will remand this back to staff. We will have another public hearing on it when you're ready to come forward and staff is ready.
November 17th, can we declare a time for that, like a decided date?
Madam Hearing Examiner, a remand is different from a continuation of a public hearing.
Okay.
A remand leaves the door open for the staff and you to work through all of the issues, and then we set a date.
Okay.
If you would rather set a date certain, that would be at the discretion of the hearing examiner, and it would be a continuation of tonight's hearing.
Okay, I'd like to do that, a continuation.
A continuation?
Yes, please.
Well, that becomes a question of, are you comfortable with that?
I frankly think you need more time than a month.
Okay. All right. I'll go with what you recommend.
I mean, if you want to make the best approach, I think you need more than a month.
Okay.
So we'll remand, and when we have the next public hearing on this subject, we will take public testimony, but we're not going to take repeats, okay? So it'll be new testimony that we haven't heard before.
Okay.
And we've closed the public comment period of this hearing, so I see hands, but I can't take your comments at this point.
Clarify new testimony.
I'm sorry?
May I clarify new testimony? With the concerns that were presented, some of our information may be the same to address. Is that okay?
Oh, sure. Your
Okay.
presentation can be whatever you need it to be to best make your case.
Okay.
But from the public, the
Okay.
testimony will be limited because we've already read all of this testimony that we've had tonight, as well as that came in prior
Yes.
to this evening that's in the case file to refer to. Okay?
All right. Thank you.
Vlad, anything more?
The only question that I had is, we did have this discussion with Jennifer Scott and her crew. This is very unique because it typically doesn't happen that there is a request to remand this or postpone the hearing. Is there any, and maybe this is a question for Director Callahan as well, is there any direction? Are you looking for specific agency comments? Are you looking for an overhaul of the applicant's request? What specifically are you interested in? Because as you understand, the code doesn't anticipate this course of action. So we just want to be careful that we understand is this a de novo hearing or is this something that is more or less just new evidence? We just want some direction for staff as well as the applicants so that the public is fully aware of what to expect.
I can address that. And Vlad, it actually is part of the Land Use Development Code in the hearing section, where it's the discretion of the hearing examiner. What I understand tonight is that we're going to work through the issues, whatever they may be, bring that back at another public hearing. And it's not de novo, it's another public hearing because we've already had one. And this will just be to entertain new information. Does that help everyone?
Yeah, and I think that there's been enough information from the questions that staff has raised with regard to the things that we don't feel we've been given enough information to validate that the comprehensive plan has been properly addressed and mitigation issues have been properly addressed, that you can speak to those things. I think there's enough question as well about the description of the facility and the definitions that have been utilized. Some of the code issues, I think that, well, not issues, but code direction that your industry must follow could be helpful in understanding what's going on. And I think that certainly meeting with the neighbors and dealing with their concerns and seeing if you can resolve some of that.
Well, while all of them are here, we have had discussion about putting on a dinner for them, and whoever wants to come can come. They're here now, they can hear me say that, and we will make sure that the dates get out to them so they can come and ask us any questions that they want to ask.
Yeah, we'd rather solve it shoulder to shoulder than face to face. So I'd rather stand beside the team and try to figure out the right way to do it than to stand face to face and argue. So let's do it shoulder to shoulder.
You know, another piece that I think you might need to address a little bit more is these 24 people need doctor's appointments, dentist appointments, all that kind of stuff. That wasn't mentioned. So there's a lot of back and forth to the property with that. Pardon me, I have brain fog.
That's okay, I'm with you. Mhm.
It was along those lines.
Transportation.
Yes. School.
Yes,
How are they getting educated?
yes, we have licensed professional teachers.
So it's
To
all in
break
person
that- to
and
break
it's
that
not,
down.
no Zoom, that method, it's all
Yeah.
kind of like homeschooled, but,
Yeah, we will bring all of that broken down
okay.
to school. Mhm.
So I think a lot of us understand the need, but we don't understand how the need is fulfilled
Yes,
for,
and it's really hard to fit all of that into 30 minutes, a comprehensive plan. So we took the main pieces that we knew that were the most important for land usage.
well, you know, you've got all the space in the world in the case file,
Yeah. Okay,
okay?
okay.
Well, this concludes our hearing then on CUP 22-0008. Thank you all for sticking with us this evening.
Thank you.
Yeah.